Good afternoon, members. As it's 2 o'clock, shall we make a start? The first item on the agenda is the election of chair. So have I got any nominations, please? Councillor Shorey? Councillor Davis. Brilliant. Is that seconded? Brilliant, thank you. Any other nominations?
Yeah, Councillor Poskett.
And is that seconded by anyone? I think Councillor Jordan was first. Any other nominations? No, okay. So as there's 2 nominations, we'll have to take a vote on who becomes the nomination and then the motion. So all those in favour of Councillor Davis, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And all those in favour of Councillor Poskett, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Councillor Poskett is the nomination. Is there a proposer for that motion, please? Councillor Prescott and a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lee. Brilliant, thank you. So the options on the table are for, against, or abstain. So all those in favour of Councillor Poskett becoming the chair for the upcoming year, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And all those against? 0. And all those abstaining? 0. Brilliant, thank you. That's Councillor Poskett duly elected as chair for the upcoming year, please, if you'd like to take your seat up here.
Thank you, members. So we move on to item 2, which is election of vice chair. Do I have any nominations? Councillor Packham? I'd like to nominate Councillor Warnecan. Have I got any seconders for Councillor? Yeah. Have I got any seconders for Steve Shorewright? Thank you. Any seconders for Councillor Warnecan? Councillor Prescott, thank you. Okay, could I have votes for Councillor Shorewright, please? Thank you, members. And can I have votes for Councillor Warnecan? Sorry, I'm not used to being up here. So I make that 7 votes for Councillor Warnecan, 6 votes for Councillor Shorewright. So
effectively the motion.
Thank you.
the motion on the table is that Councillor Warnecan becomes vice chair. Have I got a proposer for that, please? Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And a seconder? Brilliant. So all the votes in favour of Councillor Warnecan becoming vice chair for the upcoming year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. And all those against? 2, 3. And all those abstaining? Thank you. So Councillor Warnecan is duly elected as vice chair for the upcoming year. And if you'd like to take a seat up here, you can do, or you can stay there wherever you like.
It's fine. You're fine there. Thank you, members. So we move on to item 3, which is apologies for absence.
We've just got apologies from Councillor Crane and Councillor Katanak, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5, declarations of interest. Are there any to note? Thank you, Councillor Arthur. Oh, have I missed? I apologise. Sorry, item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of April 2025. Have all members seen the minutes? Does anybody have any questions or items to raise? Do all approve minutes? Thank you. Apologies. Item 5, declarations of interest. Any declarations? Thank you, Councillor Arthur.
Yes, there's a couple of items in here where it mentions my employer, Network Real, so I'm just declaring that for transparency.
Brilliant. Thank you. Any others? Noted. We move on to item 6, which is the annual update from the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. We welcome Mayor David Scaife to give this update.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for inviting me to having me today. Yes, so apologies I've not met everyone here face to face yet, but thank you for inviting me to come and speak today. So we'll just give kind of a rough overview, if that's okay, and then we've had some questions from you, which we've kind of sort of coupled together, because if there's transport questions, kind of bring them together to have a rounder answer to everything. So just a rough sort of overhead of where we are. So I was elected just over 15 months ago to be the first mayor. And I was very much driven into wanting to create healthy and thriving communities and really drive that investment in, and really to looking to improve the opportunities and all for everyone right across York and North Yorkshire. You'll also be aware that I'm the Police Fire Crime Commissioner, which I devolved those powers to Joe Coles, Deputy Mayor. I don't know if any of you have been able to meet as well, but obviously we're the first combined authority that has responsible for police and fire as well as being mayor. So it's quite a big undertaking, but a job that we are taking in our stride. In terms of devolution and where we've delivered so far, supporting local projects in this area, particularly the Selby station project, which is £2.5 million, and working with Network Rail to speed up that project. We've just been to see it just now, actually. The Selby Abbey quarter as well. £175,000 to replace and improve the EV charging infrastructure in Hambleton and Craigwood areas. And then a wider piece, £1.5 million for the Great Places funding, which is to enable North Yorkshire Council and City of York Council to create a plan for every town across the region as well. We're very much wanting to see ideas coming forward from the people in the communities who are living and best placed in those. So having that plan for every town will give us a really good pipeline of projects we can move forward with. We had initially just over £12 million secured for brownfield housing. We actually had such a large uptake of those projects coming forward from both York and North Yorkshire that we actually put in an extra 4.6 million from the Mayoral Investment Fund to top that to just over 17.3 million, which has been able to start the creation of just over 1,100 homes, and over half of these are affordable and social homes as well, which we all know that the challenges around the affordability of homes across York and North Yorkshire is one that's incredibly difficult. And we are in the process of just securing the funding for brownfield housing going forward. We haven't had it confirmed yet, but we should know in the next few days about the this year's funding, and then ongoing years. And obviously that's going to help with North Yorkshire Council progressing with its local plan. And obviously we work very closely with them to obviously identify those areas and sites to build affordable homes on as well. We've also had £7 million originally on net zero projects. We've also had the Community Buildings Fund, which was just over 600,000, which was 2 projects in Skipton and Ripon area, for example, which was the Barn in Tadcaster and Brayton Youth Connect in Brayton. And applications for the next round of that will be coming forward as well very soon. On the wider devolution in York and North Yorkshire is unlocking about 540 million over 30 years, which is the Mayoral Investment Fund. So this is allowing me to be able to free up some money into other key projects, which is around about 30 million of Mayoral Investment Funds. So we've got the £10 million High Street Fund, which is the second round of that. So the first round was 600,000, which has supported 20 projects, and the second round of the High Street Fund is gone live now, which runs to the end of July, which is an extra £400 million. We also have big, bold ambitions to be the first net carbon negative region in England by 2040. We're also developing our skills, improving innovation and skills as well. So we have the adult skills funding budget as well, which we work with, and it's really looking to link that piece into skills and businesses to make sure they are closely aligned as well. And we've also had the £10 million skills trailblazer money as well, which we, as a team working both with York and North Yorkshire, managed to put that plan together in about 6 weeks to get that money up and running and out the door. And also we've just been announced recently to be given a bus franchising pilot from government, which was announced last week, which we're just working through the details of exactly what that entails in the wider piece. Again, just as a daily or weekly synopsis of kind of what I do, because people always ask what I do, essentially. But we hold quarterly meetings with, well, I don't hold them, he does, quarterly meetings with the Prime Minister as a member of the Council of Nations and Regions. So that's all the devolved regions and mayors. Quarterly meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister as a member of the Mayoral Council. Direct relationship with all government departments. So we have somebody who sits in all government departments who we have a close relationship with. So we can have those very frank conversations. And a few of the mayors groups. So you'll be aware that myself, Tracy Braben, Mayor of West Yorkshire, and Oliver Copper, Mayor of South Yorkshire, have signed the White Rose Pact, which is working on that region-wide element for Yorkshire, particularly around the David Blunkett review into rail. And we've invited Luke Campbell, the Mayor of Hull and East Yorkshire, to come into that agreement as well, which we're just waiting on to get that cleared over and all through. What we've been doing as well is we are in the process of creating a strategic place partnership with Homes England, which will help us to develop our housing strategy right across the region. We have commissioned a strategic transport review to make sure that our transport is working better right across York and North Yorkshire. And again, that's working with partners in both local authorities and outside of our borders. We established a business board, which is chaired by Jennifer Wood, who is a business owner in Thirsk. We are finalising our innovation plan with Innovate UK, which will have some funding behind that as well, which is positive. I've commissioned a review into the future of farming, which will be launching the week after next at the Yorkshire Show. I think it's the week after next. We've got a very strong application in for an AI growth zone, which has had both local authorities, Mayor of Hull and East Yorkshire, MP Keir Mather, and other regional MPs, and a very strong support from Hull, University of York, Hull University, and Sheffield University as well. We were also asked by government to create a 10-year growth plan, which we were asked to do last year, which we've been working on, which has been finalised as we speak. And my Deputy Mayor, Joe Coles, and I also created the new police, crime and fire rescue plans as well. And in policing, that's prioritising neighbourhood policing, tackling violence against women and girls, serious violence strategy, increasing early intervention and prevention work, and a general rebuilding public confidence in the police. And I just want to say a big thank you to members of the panel who sit on the police fire crime panel, because a lot of work has been done with the panel there as well. And fire, ensuring the effective emergency response and targeted prevention, and basically prepared readiness for major incidents, and supporting our skilled staff as well. So going forward, we have been, we sort of class ourselves as the first of the new breed of combined authorities, being a predominantly rural and coastal area. So devolution has, generally speaking, been born out of core city regions, so Manchester, Liverpool, and Leeds and others. And obviously we want to be the first area that really drives forward how you can grow economies in a rural context and in a coastal element as well. We know not just northern cities, but northern rural towns and coastal towns have been severely left behind. So we're positioning ourselves to really be in that place. On transport, we are still seeking an increase in long-term sustainable funding to allow us to have a lot more flexibility around our funding, so we can have a lot more say in the projects and the improvements in the areas in transport we want to see, because we know it's probably the biggest hindrance to most people across our region. As I say, we're working with both local authorities and Homes England to develop our strategic place plan to identify those housing priorities, and again with an emphasis on particularly the affordable and social homes element as well, and playing our part in building the 1.5 million homes that government has in this Parliament. As I touched on slightly before, Chair, we in charge of the adult skills funding package. In total this year, we'll roughly have about £30 million going into adult skills funding, which is the most money that would have been spent in adult skills this year, which is a huge amount of money. And obviously the challenge that we have in delivering anything, quite frankly, in this region, but particularly around skills, is the rawness of our skills offering. So, for example, asking people to travel from the very north of North Yorkshire to York College, for example, just isn't always sustainable. So, how we can develop a skills strategy that supports home learning, evening working, more flexible working. I have a big emphasis on working with those smaller training providers that we have right across our region. So, because we know that we have a higher than average ageing population and a lower than average young people in our region, because a lot of people unfortunately are leaving our region because of the lack of affordability of homes, poor transport connectivity, and that alignment of skills to industry. So being able to have a lot of investment going to skills in particular is a really positive one for our region. I've got the questions as well, Chair, that were sent through. We've kind of like just brought them together as like a cult rather than reading for every single question. If that's okay, just give like a wider response to the questions. Is that okay? And if anyone would like any further details, we can either catch up afterwards or I can answer anything further in writing.
That's
Chair,
fine for me, David. If that's fine with members, we'll come to questions from members on the floor after, if you can address those.
That's fine. Thank you. Yeah, I just did my, yeah, okay. So generally speaking around transport and infrastructure, so we've sort of had a few questions in particular around access of Sherburn and Elmet, for example, a few roundabouts and M62 junctions and things. So we share responsibility for road infrastructure with both local authorities and in some cases national highways. So we're working with all partners to develop that concrete set of regional priorities, and this will inform where the investment in future goes, and where we seek to secure further investment from partners such as national highways, who do have the control and purse strings of a lot of those projects. Public transport, as I said, we've been selected to be one of, I think, 3 bus franchising pilots. So that's working closely with Department for Transport to be able to share. We'll be able to share more details of this in due course. But really, it's getting that knowledge, because we understand that developing whatever bus franchising model we have, be it a full Andy Burnham franchise model, be it EP plus, wherever on that spectrum we sit, it's going to have to be very unique to York and North Yorkshire, because the geography and rurality of our region. Also, just a slightly more complex is how we work cross-border. So we understand obviously a huge amount of our population travel from, say, Selby to Doncaster, from Leeds to Harrogate, York to Leeds. So they're crossing those borders. So having our transport, and I can never I always miss the northeast as well. Some people do that to travel to the northeast from time to time, but how our transport joins in with other areas of transport as well. So when you're crossing the border as the user, you just travel. You know, there's no kind of challenges there. So it's working outside the borders as much as well, and that's where a lot, particularly the White Rose work, has been really key on that as well, and having that collective voice into government. And so in the meantime, we have got the bus operators in our region around the table on a couple of occasions, and we engage with them a lot, and we're looking at what those short-term wins are to improve the services and particularly passenger experience. And something that's come out, and it might be one for follow-up next time if I can invite Joe Coles to come along. Also the security and the feeling safe of using our public transport as well. We've had quite a lot of feedback from customers and operators who have got concerns about the general safety of people using public transport. So that's something we're looking to tackle as well, Chair, from me. And so also, yeah, as I said, touched on, we're developing our region's first local transport plan, which with my officers and officers from York and North Yorkshire, and that's sort of really setting out that public transport and active travel over the longer period of time. So improving the walking, wheeling and cycling operations in the region as well, and looking at what those local priorities as well, which is getting the feedback from, and it's something we've raised at a couple of area committees, again, Chair, if I may. It's how area committees can play into that as well, because we can obviously go speak to individuals, but if we've got an opportunity where all councillors and representatives are coming into a room together to have that feedback in from what you're hearing on the ground in your specific areas, is really important and really imperative for us to get it right. So if we can have that engagement as well, that'd be really good. Just on Sherburn and Elmet, we've commissioned Network Rail to produce an assessment, and we'll consider when this is concluded. It's incredibly high priority. I can't stress enough, it really is for me. In the Sherburn, in this area, there's a huge growth and in population, and is on close proximity, obviously, and significant employment opportunity. So connecting that station with regular trains between York and Leeds and beyond is really critical for growth. So that's just on the transport pieces there. On skills and employment, sort of rough question was how the Mayor working with local colleges and school prepare individuals in the Selby and Ainsty area for jobs. As I say, just touched on skills and the funding we've got, but this is the largest investment in skills York and North Yorkshire's history, say almost £30 million, that will ensure that not just our young people, adults through all ages, can get skilled, reskilled, upskilled, so people are basically ready for the work and employments that we have. We've done a huge amount of work on skills actually, and our team is incredible, and actually have had high praise from government on this. But we had big concerns when we started off that we create a very high level qualified young person in our region, but not necessarily the skills aligned to what our industries and sectors are telling us. So on one hand, we've got really high skill, but say not that side. So it's really developing a skills plan and strategy. So working with all the different colleges, the training providers, the schools, to really get a closer alignment of what the skills our industries are asking for and what our young people or adults are having. So we know, for example, about 30% of our construction workers are going to be retiring in the next decade, and we already have a shortage of construction workers. And if we need to be building X amount of homes, for example, then we need those high skilled trades, so builders, bricklayers, carpenters, electricians, and so on. And so it's making sure we've got that pipeline of skills coming through. So aligning our money and our funding with what industry is saying is, I think, is a very sensible way of going about it. And we do have a lot of engagement with businesses through our business board and through other means, and we're getting regular feedback about what industry is saying. And we also know that how quick industries are changing with the development of technologies, that even people now in their 30s, 40s, 50s who may be in a career, that career may change quite quickly over the next decade or so. So making sure we are in a constant process of that as well. We're also working with government, and as a collective of mayors, we would love responsibility of post-16 education. Currently it's post-19. I think that ability to have stronger say in younger people would have a real great benefit, so we can engage with younger people early before we even start to lose them, because we know a lot of people leave our region for university and for studies and basically don't come back, unfortunately. So we want to be hold our young people here and show there's an opportunity here, especially in places like Selby, for example. Just around sort of planning and housing. So rough question was, how does the mayor plan to deal with locations where a landowner or stakeholder can inhabit development in the area, and what plans does the mayor have when it comes to development of housing in this area? Quite simply, we want to see the right homes that are put in the right places, and particularly social rent, social housing and affordability if possible. It's making sure that we're building the right homes for the right people. I often speak of someone like my mum, for example, who's 75, who has dementia, who's living in a home that's not fit for purpose. But as soon as you take someone out of that home into their own environment, they can deteriorate much quickly. So it's not just about building homes that are right for people and affordable and social homes, but making sure they're the right homes for lifelong livability. That's a word I'm not sure it is, but we'll go with it. But also the energy efficiency of the homes as well, because it's one thing building an affordable home to buy, but there needs to be an affordable home to live in. So obviously looking at the energy efficiency of homes as well, which is obviously good for the environmental, but also brings the cost of living in those homes down as well. We're developing, the housing investment plan, which will work with local authorities and identifying these house building opportunities, and sort of where these challenges are. So we know we have about circa 30,000 homes in York and North Yorkshire that are kind of just stuck in whatever element of planning or whatever it may be. So it's targeting those and getting those up and running, but also looking at the new development sites and opportunities we have as well. So it's a two-pronged attack, but working closely with both local authorities who have been excellent on this, and Homes England really gives us that opportunity. And the emphasis that government is putting obviously on homes building and the affordability of homes, which was announced last week in the spending review. Obviously we are looking forward to receiving that extra money to really drive forward our home building agenda. As I say, we're in the final stage of establishing the strategic place partnership with Homes England, which will be done very soon, and that's been in conjunction with both local authorities and the York and North Yorkshire Housing Partnership, who I must say are doing incredible work in the region and should be highly applauded. And actually the chair of York and North Yorkshire Housing Partnership is going to start sitting in our office once a month to really work closely with us as well on that, and so just looking at that strategic influence and how we can support housing right across the region. The government's planning and infrastructure bill will introduce new powers as well for planning applications, and it will also bolster my and the mayor's ability, if that's me, to undertake compulsory purchase powers as well if needed. So, and obviously any further powers we can to unlock sites will be crucial. High street banks was a question came through as well. How will the mayor assist with reduction in the number of high street banks? As we touched on, the High Street Fund is open to local community-led partnerships. I just want to emphasise the piece around the High Street Fund. It's not. It's been really great to hear that so many partnerships have been created from that. So we wanted it to not just be an individual person or business coming forward with a plan. It was a way to bring partnerships together, and just being into Selby now and seeing and the partnerships being created there. Richmond was another one, for example. So it's groups of people coming together to have that real collective voice of what they want to hear from their area. As I say, the first round of that is done. The second round's coming through now, and we've also funded the town investment plans, which have been managed very well by North Yorkshire Council. As I say, members being engaged in that and how that can deliver on that, and the priorities of those plans for every town will be funded through an extra 3.8 million in funding there as well. Just on a wider piece of high streets, if I may, just because it's the one area that I know something about finally. Been involved in high streets for over a decade. High streets are definitely changing and we need to be able to adapt with that. Unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of loss of those core services on high streets, and we are looking to see how we can bolster particularly things like banking, because it's not just good for like local people and communities, but it's a heartbeat of a lot of small businesses, for example, use their local banks and post offices as well. So it's how we can work with those operators to keep a foot in there. But we do know that in times, a lot of the offerings that we have on high streets now won't be there in 10 years. So we need to be able to adapt with it and show that high streets aren't dying, they're just changing. And I think we have a huge opportunity, in particularly a place like Selby, to be able to do that. And that's why we've put the £10 million fund together. Rough last question through was around climate, which was what is the Mayor doing to reduce the Combine Authority's impact on climate change, and the Mayor confirmed his office is promoting the green economy and particularly what's been done to support renewable energy generation. I can guess where this question came from, but that's basically our carbon team, our net zero team, are doing a brilliant job, and that's in a nutshell what their job is there to do. We had the first York and North Yorkshire Net Zero conference a couple of weeks ago, really well attended, over 200 people there. I've committed just over £10 million to create a carbon negative challenge fund, which has been incredibly well received, which due to the allocated of those funds will be in the next few weeks, maybe month, and that's supporting projects right across the region to meet the region's ambition to become the first carbon negative in England by 2040. We've also got the Energy Generation Accelerator Programme, which is mapping out the opportunities for energy generation in the area. We particularly focus on community-owned energy schemes, which I think, particularly for our rural areas, is going to be incredibly key and really useful. And we've also running the LEAP project. So for those who don't know, there's a Bristol City LEAP project was the first one, which was essentially a culmination of private and public sector coming together to look at how they can decarbonise a lot of the assets and the whole city region, and look how they can have a much more cleaner, greener environment. And we've been given a pilot study from government, which is funded, to be able to look at what that Bristol City LEAP project could be for York and North Yorkshire. So how you deliver that in a urban role and coastal context, and we're working through that with now DESNZ and both local authority partners to sort of actually what the scope of that work is going to be. But it's been a really exciting piece of work, really. But our net zero team, I will talk about them, champion them all day long. They are doing brilliant work, and even down to our retrofitting housing strategy as well, which has been incredibly well received, which will be getting funding from government for that strategy as well. So we see it I see it as an essential thing we should be doing, but also a unique opportunity for our region to really lead the way because of our geography. For once, our geography it actually helps us in this because of our green rural space, our everything else, and we have a good opportunity. But we know a lot of homes in our region, for example, are still run on oil, which is just crazy, really. So on that, I feel that we are really leading the way. But I can follow up on particularly what we're doing wider field on the net zero projects. If you like, I can send those through to you. Just got a really stronger reading of that. But roughly speaking, there's over £20 million going to net zero or low carbon projects, as well as the emphasis on the sustainability of the homes we're building, the improvements in public transport, and the improvements into walking, wheelers, cycling as well, to all have a knock-on benefit on the environment in the region as well. So that's it from me, Chair, on that, if that's okay. So if I waffled on for a bit too long, but yeah.
No, thank you very much, David. That was a really comprehensive, interesting report with lots of positives in there. I think we could probably all agree that we'd welcome any kind of involvement with any kind of consultation on transport and those kind of things. So thank you for that. Are there any questions from members? Got Councillor Jordan and then Councillor Warnock.
Thank you, David. That was 25 minutes of solid. I'm just trying to think of something that you don't have something involved with. My question to you is, there was, which is on housing, there was a project, when we've had initial meetings about it, the Heronsby scheme, which was for a new town to be built gently over on the between Selby and York. And there was a bit of progress being made on it, but York City Council kicked it into the long grass in the sense that they were against it. I just want to know what your views are on that scheme, if you have any.
I believe, and my understanding is from York side, I think it was more the impact on the transport and infrastructure that would be around the project. Obviously, if a large housing site is developed with no improvement to road and public transport infrastructure, what that would do to things like the A19, for example, and wider roads and arterial roads as well. So I am very pro development and house building. I won't lie or deny on that. We do have a housing crisis. We've got over 10,000 people on a housing waiting list, which is awful, really. So developing, but there need to be sustainable development sites that are supported and that have that infrastructure that comes with it. I think a lot of time when we develop, if we're doing it to communities and not doing with them, that's when we get a lot of kickback. And if people don't see that investment improvement into the local infrastructure as well, say the improvement into road network, into public transport, into the wider offerings of say, investment to schools and things, that's when projects can come let down. So my understanding is that was, I don't want to speak on behalf of York because I wasn't involved in the planning or committee, but my understanding it was a concern around essentially where all the cars and traffic would go. And so it's looking at making those projects much more sustainable rather than just putting a lot more cars onto the same roads that are currently obviously incredibly busy. So I am pro development, but obviously they need to be done correctly and with that infrastructure goes with it so they are supported properly.
I'll just come back on that, Chair, because I mean we have other areas and we're going to be building houses, and wherever we build houses, because the bus infrastructure is virtually zero, we're going to have cars.
Yeah, and undeniably so. I appreciate that the vehicle will always be the car. So it will always be one of the most dominant modes of transport in the region. But we also have to be bringing in sustainable transport alternatives. And that's why as a CA, as a combined authority, we look across departments. So we don't just look at a housing strategy or a skills strategy. We look at it in the whole. So if we're looking at those key development sites, for example, where they are interlined with the transport network is, and then what is the transport offering that goes with that, rather than just building isolated sites that aren't well connected, because then you're just going to exacerbate the problem that we have now of people only really being able to rely on the car because that's the only option that they have. Whereas we know the car is going to be dominant, and that's what it is. I live in Weldrake. I travel around the region on a daily basis. I have to use a car most of the time because it's just not convenient. But you have to give people those alternatives to make those sites much more sustainable and environmentally friendly.
Councillor Warnecan.
Thank you. Firstly, can we have a copy of your reply, or can we all, what you've read, can we have copies of?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't catch all of it, David. You crammed a lot in there. But one of the things I did miss was relating to bus franchises. Did you say as a pilot scheme, and there is a location or identified, or you haven't identified yet?
So we've been identified from government as to have a bus franchising pilot, which we're still working through the details, but essentially it'll be working with the Department for Transport to develop what a franchising model for buses would look like in York and North Yorkshire. Because as we say, franchising has generally been delivered through a core city region, a la Manchester with Andy Burnham, and the offering there is very different to what it would be in rural parts of North Yorkshire. So developing it in, say, a York and a Selby area and a Harrogate would be one thing, but doing it in the Miller Dales, the Moors, or even over to our coastal areas is a very different offering. So we're working closely with DFT to develop what that pilot is. We think it'll be, the full details will be announced in the coming weeks, but it was announced at the spend review last week that will be, I think it's one of 3 areas that have been given it, and we're one of those 3. So we've got it. It's now working with DFT to actually understand what that pilot will be and what the outcome will be. So we are working with bus operators now to see what those improvements we can see already that we can sort of get on with, and we have identified some of those. But it's what that longer term piece is, and if a full franchise model is the way, then great. But obviously it's very costly, and some of our journeys in rural parts of North Yorkshire would be incredibly costly to run. So it needs to be obviously aligned to the public purse as well. But there's certainly massive improvements that we can do in York and North Yorkshire with transport, but it's also what we want to see from that model is how a franchise model would work outside of our borders and connect with other areas, because as I said, a lot of people will move from the southern part of our region into, say, South and West Yorkshire, up into the north part, up into the northeast. So how does one franchise model connect with another franchise model, which where South and Yorkshire, South and West Yorkshire are already going? So that's a complicated piece of the jigsaw as well. But we want our users of our public transport to not have to worry about crossing the border. They should just be able to get from York to Leeds, Selby to Donk, wherever it may be, but not having to think about on crossing the border. I've now got to buy a different ticket or a new ticket. So how it all fits in that. So yeah, that. But the further details of that we'll have in the next couple of weeks. But it's only announced last week, so we're still working through them.
Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things, David. I saw an email today that you're opening up an active transport fund, which sounds great. So I'm hopeful that we can all get involved in that. I'm on the working group from ONS at North Yorkshire. I suppose the main interest for me is more with my town council hat on. It's something I keep raising. We had 5 large banks in town that left, leaving large buildings that there aren't really other businesses to go in, so they get boarded up. I'm pursuing a hub through North Yorkshire, but they take time and they've got to be tested. One of the things that we've found over the years with the town council, because we work doing Bloom and Christmas lights, we can't even trace the ownership of some of these buildings. And I think that is what's killing a lot of our market towns. It's absent owners of landlords. I'm sure they're large companies or pension funds. I'm sure they get some kind of tax write-off for it. So it's not something at a local level that we can pursue. I think it just needs someone to look at it, maybe even nationally. It's not, maybe not even regionally, but it is such a barrier to actually, reinvigorating our market towns. So anything that you can do around that, so that people can't, in the same way as developers shouldn't sit on pieces of land without doing anything, that buildings that are empty, the owner should be forced to do something with them. So if anything you can do around that, I think that would help in all our market towns as well as Selby.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So yeah, just on the active travel fund, that's going live very soon, and that's obviously invested into walking with and cycling, working both with York and North Yorkshire partners to not only just develop and ramp up their projects, but how we can look at future projects as well and improve active travel for everyone across the region. On the large empty units, I couldn't agree more. Post-COVID, actually, the amount of small independent businesses that closed was much smaller, whereas those large independents, when they go, they leave a big empty space, and a lot of time they are owned by distant landlords who are pension scheme holders, whatever it may be. And as long as that value of that property it still has the value of the property on a spreadsheet, it's still worth it, quite frankly. When I took my first shop on in York, it was owned by a pension scheme, and it took me 9 months to get the keys from the landlord, even though I'd paid and ready to go. So it's a big challenge, and a lot of time we don't know who these landlords are. So it is it's a real difficulty. So that's where, again, having and again, just they do tend to take the bigger units, and a lot of our towns, they're just too expensive for small independents to be able to take on. And it's how much engagement do those distant landlords really have in their communities. Unfortunately, probably not a lot of the time, if I'm being cynical. Yeah, none, if you want to say that, let's say that. So yes, again, I think there is maybe a piece where I could maybe just go have a way and actually think about how we can do some work on that. What we can do is part of, say, the wider piece of the high street fund is actually really drive that investment into our high street. So particularly the indies and the locally owned, operated businesses who are owned by locals, who tend to employ local people, who put so much more money back in the local economy and really drive the local economy. That's a real strength of ours. About 96% of the businesses across York and North Yorkshire are classed as micro or small businesses. That's what our region is dominated by. That's why we've got, generally speaking, a pretty decent economy, but it needs to be supported. It's hard for those businesses. So more we can do to, say, invest in the high streets and looking at what the future of high streets is as well, because a lot of the offering high streets have now, I don't want to be too cynical, but might not be there in 10 years as well. So how we can have that wider offering of what the high street becomes. It's more about a community place as well, just a shopping and eating. But certainly I can take that away and have bang our heads together in the office and see if we can look at anything we can do in there as well, because that loss of those core services, for want of a better term, you know, post offices and banks does. It's an anchor, isn't it, in your high street? It's a reason to come. So what's the offering of going to be that 10 years time? Because I'm fearful that other ones, you know, such as estate agents and travel agents, are they going to be in the high street 10 years time? I'm not sure. So it's how we can adapt our high streets now so they are more resilient in the future, because they are, you know, in our region, they are the heartblood of our economy, really. So we need to be able to support them. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Could I suggest that's something that we come back to if you're going to go away and find out a little bit of information, because I think it impacts quite a few of us. Councillor McCartney?
Yeah, cheers. Hi, David. Yeah, just a quick point on one of the points that Mel made about rotty buildings and the old banks. Councils, including North Yorkshire Council and ex-Selby Council, have a power, Section 215 notice you can issue. So it's untidy land. And Selby have only used it once. It's been in power for about 20 years. And they never use it. You can use it if somebody doesn't cut the grass. You just send them a letter and they cut the grass. But you can also use it on bigger. And if you don't, you take them to court and they're fine. The council does not use that power, Section 215 power. But and they should be using it. But my question is about housing. I did some research about the number of empty properties in North Yorkshire, and it was like just empty houses, unoccupied houses, and there were nearly 4,000. You know, we've got this housing crisis, and there's nearly 4,000 empty properties. And within the Selby district, there's a staggering 138 empty council properties. Most of them have been empty for months, if not years. And they're in all villages. There's many in Tim Grogan's area. One has been empty for 2 years. The council are ripping them out and making them into new, but they don't have the workforce. So they're just sitting there empty. And we've got thousands, as you mentioned, 10,000 people on housing waiting list. Many of them in Selby, and the council are sitting on properties that are empty and they're not letting them out. They're actually losing about £750,000 in rent the rent account, which is disgusting. But most things, people who on the housing waiting list are not getting a home because of this. And I think maybe you could sort of kick their ass a bit and get them working and getting these houses open and ready for people to live in.
I can't speak on behalf of North Yorkshire, but what I would say is we're looking at part of our strategy around housing is it's not just about building new, but actually looking at a current building offering and how they can either be retrofitted or brought to standard, or actually looking at changing the purpose of potentially builds as well, because there's nothing better than actually taking a building that's currently sat there empty and actually turning that into housing as well. So that's part of the strategy we're looking at as well, because, you know, just to build new, it takes unfortunately a really long time to build new houses, quite frankly. So having that multi-stringed approach to it, and how we can actually look at the houses that are currently sat that are not being built, why, looking at property that's empty and how we can redevelop that, why, and then looking at a new build as well. The skills bit, which you touched on there, is really imperative, because actually it's not just the skills to actually build new, it's actually those retrofitting skills as well, and actually building homes to a higher energy efficient standard as well, which we have a lack of as well. And we're very conscious that we don't lose skilled workers to other areas where there might be that larger pipeline. So we need to be creating our own pipeline of workforce as well, who can not just do those core bricklaying, but actually looking at those different skills, which to say develop a building is a very different skill to bricklaying, like a brand new one, for example. We're also looking at like the energy efficient skills as well. So that's all part of our skills journey. But you're 100% right. If we've got properties that are sat empty, we have to be asking why and how we can get those fit for purpose. Because while we have people waiting on the housing waiting list, which I think we're all feel is awful, how we can actually get that going. Yeah.
And I'm hoping that Carl will take that up as well. 136 have been empty for years, and some have had no work done on them at all. There's one house, I think it's in Beale, where they've put some solar panels on the roof, and that's it, and left it, and then been back for months. And that's disgusting. But nationally, apparently, there's about 1 million permissions for house building, which haven't been taken up by the developers. They're getting planning permission, and then they're just sitting on them waiting, because they don't want to start building because there's already somebody else building, and they want to keep prices up. It's an absolute shambles, isn't it?
If I could just Sorry, Chair. Also, it's the build rates of those house building developers as well. So they're controlling the market essentially by building out developments small. So if you've got a development of maybe 3,000-4,000 homes, you might only build 50, a year. But again, it just takes so long. I mean, some of the projects we're talking about, I'll be dead by the time they're finished. So it's actually, we've got to get that build out rate quicker as well. So looking at how you get several builders on the same site, for example, to get those build out rates quicker. So
We've got a site like that, which is going to come forward. It's potentially 1,500 houses, 1,500 houses. But the reality is they're only going to come in with 500 because if they build more than the 500, they've got to provide a new school. So they're just going to take the P, come in for 500, then come back for another 500. And the councils just take it. It's really sad.
Thank you, David. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Grogan.
I'd like to bolt my question and onto what Councillor Jordan mentioned. You talked about Herrenby, and you said you're broadly supportive of that, and that's good to hear. I was disappointed when York turned against it, purely because of the A19. When you think of the outer ring road in York, it's probably the worst road in terms of trying to get forward at certain times of the day anywhere in Yorkshire. So I'm going to take away from this meeting that when that Herrenby site comes up again, you'll be broadly supportive of it, David. Is that correct?
I'm supporting of sustainable projects. So if it comes with the infrastructure required, say, as we touched on there, the schooling, for example, the improved transport connectivity and everything else, then yeah, but it has to come with that wider. We can't just build dormant villages or towns that just don't, that just exacerbate the problems that we already face.
Thank you, David. That was really informative. Lots of really good information there, and I think definitely some things that we'd like to come back to as members. You are free to leave if you would like to go get a drink.
Very much, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
So we move on to item 7, which is update from the area committee's MPs. You should have all received a written update from Sir Alex Shelbrooke. Members should have got that via email. Unfortunately, Keir Mather isn't able to be with us today, but we've got Owen Hardingbest instead. Would you like to come forward, Owen? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, I'll just give a brief update from Keir. He sends his apologies. He can't be here today. It's been a busy week in Westminster. So we continue to process a significant amount of casework as an office. We've recently passed our 13,000th case on behalf of local constituents. Keir continues to hold weekly surgeries across the constituency and virtually. And last month, we travelled up to North Allerton to meet Councillor Carl Les, as well as Richard Flinton and other senior officers in North Yorkshire Council. It was a pretty constructive meeting. Obviously, we do send a lot of casework through to those officers and we appreciate their support. That they are generally incredibly supportive. Now I'll move on to just give a brief update on the 4 key local campaigns which Keir identified on the last constituency-wide leaflet that we issued. So obviously, members will be interested to hear about progress in the new SEND school in Osgoodby. Appreciate that there's been a great deal of delay on this after funding was first granted in 2019. Obviously, probably about 18 months, 2 years ago, we passed planning, despite some issues with perceptions about how it looked. We have just had the comprehensive spending review, which was the first line-by-line review of government expenditure, I think, in 13 years. That meant, of course, that there was some delay, and I think there were some difficulties in terms of getting into contract. But what we're pleased to say is that Keir wrote to Secretary of State for Education last month to basically make it clear that it's not acceptable that an information void had been seen to develop. And I think that kind of resulted in unhelpful rumours circulating about, contractors or further hiccups. We're really pleased to say, though, that the Minister for School Standards has got back to us and we can expect construction to commence this summer. Now, when construction does begin, we expect it to take approximately 18 months. Obviously, that takes us well into the 26-27 school year. So one of the things that Keir will continue to be pushing on is speaking to Wellspring, the DFE and North Yorkshire Council about the potential to try and see that we might be able to get a mid-academic year start. As I understand it, it's the proposal is still for phased entry. So we're not expecting all 100 places to be available immediately, but obviously we want to see as many places available as soon as possible. Keir will be meeting the presumptive principal of the new school next month. She already leads schools in Harrogate and Leeds under Wellspring. Keir has been working hard on this, so he's had regular meetings with special advisors, with civil servants and with ministerial colleagues, and we hope that this will be a welcome update, certainly for parents, and grateful to members for getting that news out there that we expect construction to start this summer. The second key local campaign which Keir identified is that of poor phone signal, something that we all experience, I think, in this area. The initial step that we took is we asked someone from North Yorkshire Council to come out and take some readings of the phone signal in the Selby East Ward, because what we were hearing was that people's experiences on the ground really didn't kind of mirror what operators were saying to be the case. And lo and behold, that was exactly right. So the North Yorkshire Council readings did suggest that the signal was far worse than O2 or Vodafone or various other operators were telling their customers. That obviously helps build a case for investment and infrastructure improvements, and we're quite pleased to report that Vodafone and Three have now completed their merger. That's been accepted by the CMA, the Competition Markets Authority. One thing that we think is particularly pernicious about this issue, and we've had it a lot in Thorpe Willoughby actually, where power cuts have happened and have knocked out the mobile phone signal. This is a real issue because obviously there are a lot of elderly people, a lot of vulnerable people, and what we're hearing, of course, is that not only do they not have power for their landlines, but they also don't have phone signal. So one of the things that we're trying to get out of O2 and Vodafone and also Cornerstone and the infrastructure companies is a commitment to more backup generators. So when power does go out, we don't see everything being knocked out all at once. It's obviously a very important issue. There's also news today, which I think will be welcome, £300 million of private investment in improving phone signal along main lines in the UK. So the East Coast main line stands to benefit from that. It is very frustrating if people are travelling when phone signal's knocked out, you know, on their journey. So that's good news. The third of four issues is that of flooding. Pleased to announce that £1 million of infrastructure maintenance was approved by DEFRA a few months ago. In addition to that, the comprehensive spending review, which I mentioned, confirmed almost £8 billion of funding for flooding infrastructure and maintenance. We've heard quite clearly from the Environment Agency that as well as large-scale schemes like that in Tadcaster, they do need money for maintenance, and that should be welcome. It might be interesting to members to know that DEFRA's research suggests that for every £1 that they spend on flooding assets, it actually prevents up to £8 of economic damage, and the Treasury suggests that they keep £3 of that. Obviously, we do want a joined-up approach as well to flooding. So, of course, we need to prevent this situation where there's uncertainty as to which agency it is in charge of an asset, and that's troubling. And we'll continue to try and hold Yorkshire Water to account on that in particular. And finally, the issue of road safety is one that continues to come up everywhere that we go across the constituency, and I think all members will agree with that. We certainly welcome the appointment of a new executive member to the position in North Yorkshire Council. We hope that will enable a bit of a reset with the relationship. Very conscious that these issues don't fall within the traditional remit of an MP, but it's hard to ignore these issues when you go and speak to people and invite them to tell you what their issues are. You know, road safety is always one of the top ones. And Keir's view on this is, of course, that one preventable road death is one too many. Now, there are a few practical measures that we'd like to see implemented. One is, of course, common sense 20-mile-an-hour speed limits outside of schools where that's appropriate. That is really important, and we were pleased to see that the council said that they would launch consultation into looking at that. I mean, it's good enough for Harrogate. We think it should be good enough for Selby. I know that Councillor Shawwright has invited the new executive member to visit Selby, and Keir would be very pleased to join for that. We expect to have the Minister for Roads visiting the constituency in September, and we're likely going to take them, I think, to Monk Fryston, where there's an ongoing need, we think, for a pedestrian crossing, and some debate still about who owns the land that's needed to make that happen. Also, I think Escrick, I know Councillor Castanek isn't here today, but Escrick does need a better crossing. It's a village where all the amenities are on one side and most of the houses are on the other, and it's not safe at the moment. So those are the four key local issues that Keir's been campaigning on, as well as his work in Westminster, where he serves as a government whip. Obviously, they're slightly arbitrary in that there are many more issues that I could speak to you about today, but those are the four key ones. I'd be very happy if the chair feels it appropriate to take questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Have members got any questions for Owen? And also, if there's any questions that need to be fed back to Sir Alec. Councillor Warnecan?
Yeah, Chairman, it's just a repeat of what I asked the Mayor. Can we have a copy of what you've just read out, please?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor
And just to add to that, without Keir actually appearing, we could have done that with the written report, same as Alec. Without being able to ask him questions, it's pointless. Thank you very much.
Noted, thank you. Councillor Grogan?
Yeah, thanks, Owen, for your efforts in terms of Monk Fryston. I'm interested in that, and I've heard from you how vocal Keir's been in terms of these four issues. What's his views in terms of the rural funding that we've lost in North Yorkshire, please?
Do you refer to the Rural Service Delivery Grant? Yes. So I'm conscious that Councillor Les is behind me. I don't think that we'd agree with some of the statements that North Yorkshire Council have put out about this. Core spending power has increased this year for North Yorkshire Council. The Rural Service Delivery Grant was unfunded after the 2024 general election. And, you know, I'm not going to tie you with lines about the fiscal situation that the government inherited. But the question on rurality has now, I think, been included in the latest iteration of the fair funding review. One of the exec members that we met was Gary Fielding, and I'm having quite frequent conversations with him, particularly in terms of homeschool transport, the adult social care formula. Like I said, core spending power has increased, and the fair funding review is continuing, and Keir will continue to contribute to that.
Any other? Councillor Short?
Yeah, it's on the removal of the Rural Services Grant. Is it not true the actual overall grant that North Yorkshire received from this government is more than the 15 million they lost? Because I think they got an extra 20 million, and recently at a housing meeting we've been allocated 40 million for retrofitting houses. So actually the council is far better off under this government than it was under the last.
That's correct. Core spending power has increased.
Thank you, members. Any other comments or anything to feed back to anyone? No, thank you. We move on to item 8, which is public questions and statements. I know that we've got a few speakers here. I'd like to welcome everyone that's come along to speak on this subject. We're all very aware of how challenging and emotive this is, you know, so we're really keen to hear keen to hear your questions. So I'm going to hand over to David, who will introduce you all.
So yes, the deadline for requesting to speak was midday on the 23rd of June. We've received 5 requests to speak, which is the maximum number of questions that can be asked at any meeting. I'll just quickly outline these before we get on to the questions. Speakers get 3 minutes to read out their statement. I'll provide a response which I've got from officers following all 5 statements, and then following that, individuals will get 30 seconds if they have a supplementary question. So could I call on Terence Moran, please, for the first question?
Thank you.
If you come take a seat, please, and then it's the button on the right-hand side of a microphone, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you'll forgive me if I read this out. As it was indicated a moment ago, these questions are submitted in advance, and therefore I won't seek to depart from the text. This is a question about the cost assumptions behind the school transport policy changes, and I'd like to direct it to the councillors responsible for supporting this policy. Previously, this was simple. 1 bus route served each village, taking students to their catchment school, Tadcaster Grammar. But under the new policy, transport is now being split between schools in York and Tadcaster, depending on walking distance proximity. The result, where 1 bus once sufficed, now 2 separate services are needed, and transport is being provided to multiple schools from the same village. In the villages of Appleton, Roebuck and Bilborough, every home is over 3 miles from any secondary school. That means that some form of transport provision is going to be required for children in these communities, regardless of which school they attend. This isn't theoretical. We know this will happen. In Appleton Roebuck, 3 children were granted passes and 4 were not. A single bus would have worked for all 7 children. Now it will require 2. The same is true in Bilborough, where children living at the Catterton end of the village will still qualify for transport to Tadcaster Grammar because it remains their nearest school. How did the council factor these locations into its cost-saving assessments? And how assured is the council that this policy will result in savings rather than increasing overall transport costs?
Thank you, and feel free to stay there because I know you've got a question later as well. Speaker 2 is Glynis Ashford, please. And once again, you'll have 3 minutes for your statement.
The decision to remove school transport eligibility for children living in Appleton Roebuck, Bilborough and Tockwith, all of which are in the catchment area for Tadcaster Grammar School, is almost certainly going to reduce the number of pupils attending Tadcaster Grammar School over time. We spoke with a representative of Tadcaster Grammar School who noted that while there has been no immediate drop in pupil numbers, there was almost certainly going to be because the policy change was not widely known amongst parents. He explained that the school had not themselves had communicated the changes directly, as it had been included as a minor item in the red bag, which made it easy to miss. He also shared serious concerns about a potential rise in parents choosing to drive children to school, given the already severe congestion in Tadcaster during the morning drop-off period. In some cases, he said, parents are already deliberately arriving late to avoid traffic, which is having a negative effect on people's education and their classroom routine. This is a policy with clear and serious consequences for a key school in your division. Can you please comment on the specific impact of this policy change for Tadcaster Grammar School?
Thank you. And then question 3 was submitted by Catherine Walker, but Glynis, I believe you're reading it on her behalf as she was unable to attend.
Under the current system, families are no longer eligible for school transport, so can apply for a paid seat. But even then, nothing is guaranteed. This leaves families in a highly stressful position, especially in rural areas where there are often no realistic alternatives. When a paid seat is granted, it can be revoked with just 1 week's notice. And with the appeal process likely to drag into the start of the academic year, many families are left with no clarity at all until the very last moment. For context, the first day of school for Tadcaster Grammar School is the 2nd of September, just days after the council says it might confirm transport availability. So my question on Catherine's behalf is, what would you like to say to the 11-year-olds starting secondary school this September, who are facing one of the biggest transitions of their lives, but don't know how they're going to get to school a few days before the term starts? Thank you.
Thank you. And question 4 is submitted by Leonie Smith, please.
Council's own home to school transport policy clearly states that information on eligibility for school transport must be readily available. I want to talk about what readily available has looked like in practice. Parents these days are organised. We build WhatsApp groups, year group chats, Facebook groups, anything to make sure we don't miss something. And they work. You'll get 100% compliance on things like non-uniform days. But here's what's strange. When the school transport eligibility changes came into effect, arguably a decision with much greater long-term impact than non-uniform day, hundreds of parents across North Yorkshire missed the memo. Strange. It seemed weird to us too, so we started digging. And what we found is a catalogue of poorly managed communication. York schools were entirely omitted from some of the council's communications. Tadcaster Grammar School have admitted that no communication was shared as the comms were hidden in a weekly circular from the council. Official letters included links to outdated web pages, referred to superseded versions of the transport policy. So my question is, would the councillors now agree that the communications have not been adequate?
Thank you. And then the final question was submitted by Paul Dale, and I believe Mr. Moran, you're reading it on his behalf.
Since the eligibility emails were sent to families just before half term, we've seen a large number of appeals, widespread confusion, and a growing sense of frustration at the lack of transparency in how this policy has been implemented. Just this past weekend, we posted a message in the Bilborough Village WhatsApp group to alert people to the policy change and ask if they would like to sign up as supporters of the appeal effort. In less than 48 hours, over 160 people came forward, not just parents of this year's Year 7s, but residents concerned about the wider impact on the village, including the long-term effect on house prices, family life, and community sustainability. We understand that there will be a review of this policy, but that is scheduled for 2028. If this policy is to regain public trust, we believe the review must be independent, transparent, and begin soon enough to shape a fairer system, ideally with changes in place for the 2026 intake. This review being independent is of particular concern. There is a genuine fear that this review could become an exercise in officers marking their own homework, rather than a meaningful opportunity to reflect, consult, and correct course. My question on behalf of Paul Dale, can you please explain the nature of the review and, importantly, when it will begin and if it will be independent?
Thank you. And Chair, I have a response from officers if I'm all right to read that. The council's home to school travel, home to school travel policy was agreed by the council at its meeting in July 2024 and became effective on 1st September 2024. That's not it. The policy aligns the council's arrangements for home to school travel with statutory guidance issued by the Department for Education, where the main eligibility criteria for assistance with home school travel is that assistance is provided to the nearest suitable school with available places. Excuse me. The council's previous home to school transport policy defined the main eligibility criteria as being that assistance would be provided to either a pupil's nearest or catchment school. As a result, parents in areas where the nearest school was not the catchment school were provided with eligibility to more than one school. This was not available to the parents of all children. The policy was informed by an analysis undertaken on a large sample of eligible parents, which demonstrated that the annual savings arising from the adoption of the policy could result in savings of up to £4.2 million by the end of the implementation period. The savings arising from the implementation of the policy will be monitored by the council. The council is aware that parents consider a broad range of factors when making decisions about which school they should preference when making an application for a school place for their child. Since the adoption of the policy, the council has sought to advise parents that they should consider the implications of the home to school transport policy if they wish their child to be provided with assistance with home to school travel. The council is committed to monitoring the impact of the policy, including on admissions patterns. The council offers the option for families to buy a permit to travel on council services where a spare seat exists. Clearly, not all contracts or routes will have spare seats available, and the council is not able to confirm whether there is capacity to sell seats until all children who are eligible for travel have been allocated transport assistance. Parents of children who are not eligible for home to school travel assistance are required to make their own arrangements for getting their children to school. All parents of children in the Year 7, secondary and primary reception class entry for September have been notified of their eligibility. As a reminder, the council undertook a detailed consultation exercise prior to the adoption of the policy, which included communication to all schools in North Yorkshire via the established and long-standing communication channel between the council and schools. The communication asked that parents be informed of the consultation. Council officers liaised with school leaders, including those representing Tadcaster Grammar, and discussed the policy change. In addition, the council consulted with all 13 local authorities with whom North Yorkshire shares a boundary, asking that the consultation be highlighted with schools in their areas. It also promoted the consultation via local media outlets, the council's website, and the social media channels. The online survey that was undertaken as part of the consultation generated a total of 1,299 responses from respondents representing different areas around the county. The policy will be reviewed in the summer of 2026, and the findings will be reported to the Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The policy review will consider the objectives of the policy, evidence relating to the budget associated with the policy, risks and assumptions relating to the policy change, as well as wider impacts of the policy. The review may lead to recommendations for further changes to this policy. And Chair, if I might, obviously after that statement, the three that have attended will get the supplementary statement or question if they so wish.
Yeah, please do speak. Yeah.
May I clarify one point? Is that a single statement in response to each of the questions that we've asked, rather than a single collective statement? Thank you.
Could I note that I don't think you've really answered the questions, please?
I can raise that with the officers.
Yeah.
I realise this is a highly emotive subject and it's been debated at length. I think if members would allow me, I would invite any members of the public to contact the councillors that are there, that they know are in those areas. I've received a couple of emails recently, so I'm reluctant to let us get into a debate, but I'm happy for councillors to comment. Councillor Warnock and then Councillor Lee.
Chairman, I would like to know who the author of the answer is, because that's not apparent. Secondly, I think it's a bit remiss of us just to answer all the questions in one statement. And actually, I agree with one of the questioners that we really haven't answered the questions. So I think I'd like some further information for the people that have gone to the trouble of writing those questions, coming to this meeting, asking on behalf of their communities, and then just brushed off with an anonymous statement.
I have one supplementary question, please. As you said, it's a generic answer. As chair of governors at a primary school in Askham Richard, which is one of the feeder schools to Tadcaster, I would like whoever wrote that to say what would they say to those 11-year-olds, and what are they thinking in terms of their children's well-being, for their future. They are each year going to spend year 6 worrying about where they're going and how they're going to get there. Thank you.
In answer to you, Councillor Warnocken, the officers that responded were Amanda Fielding, who's the Assistant Director for Inclusion, and John Holden, who's the Head of Strategic Planning, CYPS. And I will feed back any comments to them and see if we
Could
can
you
get another
repeat the
response.
second name, please?
Yeah, it's John Holden, and he's Head of Strategic Planning.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I feel like I need to make a comment because the residents here are my constituents, and I have had communications from them. I know from Leonie, she's communicated me via email, and some of the other questions that have been put forward today and you know, read out by the gentleman here have also, those people have also contacted me. And I've given assurances to everyone who has written to me on this issue. I know it's an emotive subject, and I know there's a lot of unhappiness and dissatisfaction with the policy. But I've written to the executive member and I've written to the senior officers to request more detail about some of the potential confusion and ambiguity within the policy document, which is the thrust of some of the complaints that I've been receiving. So I've given an assurance that I will be working with the officers and the executive member, and if there are any inconsistencies, and if this policy and its implementation has thrown up anomalies that are not working, the policy is throwing up these kind of issues, then I will be, you know, questioning the officers and pushing potentially for a change in the policy. A lot of people have asked me if I support a review. I do support a review. Support a review of any council policy. It should be done on an ongoing basis. It's up to the council to decide who conducts the policy. But I think that it's not just councillors, you know, in this part of the authority. It's all over. We're all getting a lot of communication on this, and we need to be assured that the policy is working correctly. But just to be clear, I did support the policy. I supported it, and I've been honest with the people who have written to me because of the dire financial situation that we are in. We have to continue to make savings. You know, the government has taken away our rural services grant, £14 million a year. We're under huge pressure on statutory services. We've got adult social care, special educational needs, millions and millions of pounds every year, rising costs. So that is putting absolute pressure on the authority. And we don't want to end up in a situation where we're bankrupt like Birmingham and other authorities. So it's very, very difficult to remove these kind of services. Having said that, I want to make sure that policies are fair, and where we've got situations and the issues that have been raised, I want to make sure that they've been thought through clearly and that we are not burdening the council with any unnecessary costs when there is a more constructive solution to some of these issues. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I just want to give this I know it's a really difficult subject, but we've got 5 more minutes on this. I just want to bring in other councillors for comments. So if I can bring in Councillor Lunn first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've been in receipt from one of the objectors to the policy, asking me to justify things I said at full council. I've replied, and she appears to be reasonably satisfied with my explanation. But as chair of the audit committee at Selby, on the financial side, we have seen an increase from £19 million to £51 million, the cost of home to school transport. And this causes a lot of problems. But I can assure everyone that we will, the audit committee will robustly look at savings and measure the savings and the evidence for those savings and the need for those savings at audit committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lunn. If I can just get comments from members, and then I will come back to you for final comment, Mr. Smith. I've got Councillor Shawright.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's important that this committee reflects the views of the residents. And I would move that we have a vote that this committee supports the views of the residents and send that result of the vote back to North Yorkshire Executive. And I would so move. Those over there.
I'll come back to that, Councillor Shawright, once we've heard from everyone else. So, Councillor Grogan.
At this point, we've already stretched this. You shouldn't be taking a motion because it's public participation and questions. It's not part of the agenda, so I can't agree that we take a vote on anything. But
I'm going to bring David into this.
To clarify, the constitution reads as this. Unless the chair decides otherwise, no discussion will take place on any question or statement, but any member may move that a matter raised by a question or statement be deferred to the next meeting or referred to the executive or the appropriate committee or subcommittee. Once seconded, such a motion will be voted on without discussion. No other decision may be taken in relation to any question or statement.
Would you be happy to refer this to the executive if you're suggesting the motion? Or yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Shawright. Okay. Okay, thank you. So Councillor Shawright's proposing a motion to move this to the executive members. Councillor Davis has seconded that. Is that correct?
Point of order, man. What's the motion? What are we voting on here?
Councillor Shawright, do you want to clarify, please? Thank you.
That this area committee supports the views of those residents who have written to the council objecting to the new homeschool transport policy. And we send our unanimous, hopefully, views to the executive.
Oh, sorry.
The views of residents are broad. There are lots of detail within it. I think such a broad spectrum motion is very difficult to support. I'm supporting my residents in the communications they have made to me, but it's not clear what you're saying, Steve. You're saying we support the views of the residents, but we're not clear on all the detail of all the views. I'm supporting my residents, but there are more residents of similar views and perhaps different views with different details and are in attendance today.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'm just going to bring David in here because there's clearly it's a hugely emotive topic, and I want to make sure that we get it right for members and for those that are in attendance.
Again, the constitution does outline that no other decision may be taken in relation to a question or statement. The only thing that can happen, or two things, is either this question gets referred to our future meeting as an agenda item, or it gets referred to the executive. But no other decision. So in theory, the committee can't show support for anything that's said. It's just referring the question directly to the executive or to a future meeting of this committee.
Councillor Short, do you want to amend that motion or? Okay, so Councillor Shawright makes the motion. Councillor Davis has seconded that. Is everyone clear on what the motion is?
The motion is that this question gets referred to a future executive meeting.
Chair, can I ask what question? All 5 questions or one particular question?
Councillor Shawright, can I get your view on that? All 5.
All 5 questions received one stock answer. So therefore, all 5 questions are one question as a whole. They received one answer. So those questions should be referred to the executive. It's quite simple, not difficult. I know, I mean, it's difficult for Andrew because I think this is the first meeting he's attended in public. He's usually sat on a screen somewhere, so he probably doesn't know how things work, but you know.
So the motion is that all of those questions posed by members of the public be referred to the executive so that they receive a substantial answer on each of those questions. That's seconded by Councillor Davis. All in favour of Those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. I realise we've spent a long time discussing this, but I would like to come back to Mrs. Smith just for the final comment, if that's okay.
I just had a question for Councillor Lee. Sorry. My question was for Councillor Lee around the anomalies you mentioned. So my eldest child goes to Tadcaster Grammar on the free school bus. My youngest is in year 5. So he was expecting to go to Tadcaster Grammar. I'm now expected to apply to a York school that we're not in catchment for, when we are in catchment for Tadcaster Grammar, for which there's no transport. Looking at, if I do that, I can't actually appeal your decision on public transport based on your appeal criteria. So how would I appeal that? Because I'm not this year.
Councillor Lee, do you want to take that up independently?
Yeah, I would say that all these points have been raised with me, and I share concerns that the same concerns that have been brought to me today by the residents. I share. I've sought clarification, and we will, I will discuss it with them, and see what we can do to get things sorted out.
Thank you, members. I'm just going to come very quickly to Councillor McCartney and then Councillor Grogan. If we could keep it brief, please, because we've discussed it at length. Thank you.
Just a couple of points. Firstly, Andy made the point about the current budget, because we've got a Labour government, and I think he's forgetting that for the last 14 years, the Conservative government cut North Yorkshire budget by 60%, and that's why we've got financial problems. On the other issue, if we now change this policy, what would happen to all my residents who have stuck to the rules and gone to the nearest school? And they're now registered with the nearest school. And I think it's too late for my residents, and every one of them, except one, has done that. There's one who still wants to go to Brayton High School, but everybody else is going to the nearest school. So what happened? Sorry, I didn't ask you to answer it. I was talking members. And what happens to them now? So they're booked in for that school. And I think it's too late to change it. I did vote against this silly rule, but it's in place now, and I don't think we can change it, sadly.
Thank you, Councillor McCartney. Councillor Grogan?
Yes, I supported this vote because of fiscal responsibility, and I'm listening to what Councillor Lunn said and support what he said and what Councillor Lee says. But similarly, I've heard these 5 questions today, which are concise, apposite, and very well prepared, should I say. And I wasn't particularly impressed with the response from the council, a broad answer, which didn't answer the particular nature of each question. And that's why I would like those questions answering by an officer, the particular points, because I went to a meeting last week with 26 parents turned up, and that was in Byram. And they were raising the issues that these parents are raising today. And I said that each would get answers to their queries. And I simply hope they're not going to get the broad brush answer that's been produced today, because one of the criticisms that we've heard today is poor communication. Well, that exemplifies poor communication from my point of view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Grogan. I think, at the heart of all of this, which all members are aware of, is young people. They're impacted most by this. So I think all members are very sensitive and aware of that. I'm just going to bring David back in, as we need to bring Daniel in.
Yes, Daniel should be in the meeting. I'll just make sure he's pinned on the screen. Ready when you are, Daniel.
Thank you. So hopefully everyone can hear me and see me okay. I understand that there's a motion being considered to refer the matter of homeschool transport back to the executive. Is that correct?
It's to refer the 5 questions that were brought to the committee today to the executive, Daniel.
So I think on that, in terms of referring any matters relating to the home school transport policy, obviously it's full council that's the decision maker. So if it's a view to try and have a change to the decision that has been made on the adoption of the policy, it would need to go to full council. And obviously it's recently been to full council for a second time, so it can't go for another 12 months. If it's for points of clarification, then I would suggest that executive will just refer it to the executive member and the head of service to respond to the questions, particularly if they're technical questions. So the
And that
referral
was
will
what's
become
voted for, Daniel. So hopefully it's effectively the 5 questions have been referred to the executive for a more substantial answer.
So I suppose the query then in my mind is that, you know, we've created an additional level of administration because this will come full circle, and the technical aspects of the questions could have been picked up directly with the executive member and the relevant head of service in the first place. But obviously, if that's the will of the committee, that's the will of the committee. But it's to re-emphasise that in terms of the overall policy, it cannot, the matter cannot be reconsidered by council until May next year.
Thank you, Daniel. The issue was very much the blanket response to 5 quite individual questions. That's what members were disappointed with. So it's not a discussion about the policy. It would be more answers for the people that have come to us today. Yeah, I think.
Okay, no, well, thank you for the clarification. I mean, from my perspective, it's not uncommon practice for similar questions to be grouped because obviously it saves time. But, you know, if members of the public who've submitted those questions aren't happy with that, again, I'm sure that officers with the executive member can provide a detailed response.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you to everyone. I'm afraid we've not got time to continue. I am very aware of how difficult this is and how important, and we are really grateful for you to come along. I'm sure that lots of you will keep communicating with councillors. This will come back, obviously, and we'll keep speaking to everyone. So thank you for your time today. So we move on to item 9, community safety annual update. I know we've got lots of officers present, but I would call on Julia to come and report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We're here to sort of present an overview of the community safety and CCTV for this area. So thank you for inviting us here today. And we've got my sort of Laura, who is the operational officer in the district, which I'm quite sure many of you already know, and Evie, who has the senior responsibility. So what we've tried to do here is give you an overview of some of the local activity that's actually taking place. And I'm sure that you can see from the report in front of you that there's been quite an extensive amount of activity taking place, which is also quite varied. A couple of things I'd just like to sort of pull out. We use the legislation that's available to us whenever we can, and you can see from the report there that there's been a couple of successful uses of closure orders at problem premises. And then we've also introduced a county-wide project which has had an impact locally here, which is the introduction of the knife bins, particularly in Selby and one in Tadcaster, and that's also mirrored across the whole of North Yorkshire. And you can see from the report that we're already collecting quite a number of bladed items into the boxes, which is actually a real positive sort of impact on taking those away. We're also, as well as the local delivery side, we also respond to the more strategic priorities from the Community Safety Partnership. So you can see from the report there, domestic abuse is one of the key priorities across North Yorkshire. And we've illustrated there in terms of some of the work, because we're looking back within this report as well as a little bit of looking forward. It sort of illustrates some of the work around the 16 days of action that's specifically engaging with our local communities communities and supporting them. And then there's been some more recent work around stalking and harassment during April of this year. There's now a statutory duty around serious violence, so we're working across North Yorkshire to deliver a number of objectives there, and also drawing down funding from the Mayor's office. We are working with North Yorkshire Police around the nighttime economy, and specifically a strategy to deliver objectives in the coming months around there. Quite a topical theme here also is around our duty with regards to the prevent and sort of ensuring people aren't radicalised and pulled into extremism. So within this area, we've got the local prevent group, which brings partners together, where we update and provide information and make sure we're sort of delivering against those particular objectives. We deliver training, and there's a huge amount of engagement taking place with regards to that. With regards to CCTV, there's quite a lot happening with regards to CCTV, which has had a slight knock-on effect with regards to dealing with some of the upgrade work on the Selby cameras. The control room at Northallerton, because the Stonecross building is being sold, we've had to relocate the control room into Harrogate. So that's delayed slightly getting on with our work for Selby, because we have to be out of the control room at Northallerton by the end of August, which was quite a, well, we're ongoing with it, but it's quite a tall order, moving all that across. But we are working locally in terms of having a plan to upgrade the cameras here in Selby, and they will be moved across to Harrogate. But then I think the big benefit of that will be it'll be a 24-hour service, whereas currently it is actually a part-time sort of weekend surveillance service that we're receiving at the moment. We do have we will be looking at the strategic direction about CCTV in the future, and that will involve our North Yorkshire partners and colleagues. Unfortunately, our police sergeant who was going to present the police reports had to go, I'm afraid, but I'm happy to take any, I can't present their report, but I'm happy to take any questions on their report back to them and feed that back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do members have any questions? Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. You mentioned antisocial behaviour, and you mentioned antisocial behaviour in Tadcaster and Selby. You don't mention anything about antisocial behaviour in Sherburn, and I feel I should raise that with you. There is a big upsurge of antisocial behaviour in Sherburn at the moment. People throwing fireworks, disrupting residents in the town centre, forcing shops to close early, lighting fires in the woods, off-road bikes. In fact, it's got to such a level now that I've actually received today a letter from Sherburn Town Council inviting myself, the Deputy Mayor and the local Chief Inspector to a meeting to discuss it. And I wondered if you were aware of it and if you were aware of any action that was being taken to address it. Thank you.
I'll bring in Laura, who's got that local perspective in terms of that. Sometimes what we do operate is a MAPS meeting, which is a multi-agency problem-solving meeting, and some of the information that we will be discussing, we won't be able to share at this meeting, but I think Laura will give you an overview in terms of the key things that are taking place that we can share with you.
So I think obviously when we wrote the report, we tried to keep it as succinct as possible. It's not to say that we're not aware of anything that's going on in Sherburn. We fully are aware of things that are happening. Julia's alluded to some of those multi-agency meetings, and some of those individuals are being discussed in that multi-agency arena. We're not able to share that for obvious reasons, but we are working with the police for some of the antisocial behaviour. We work very closely with the neighbourhood policing team up there, and Lauren, who is currently the sergeant in the community safety hub, is getting moved across to Sherburn imminently, so there will be some more police support in that area, some direct police support in that area also.
Just a quick follow-up, please. Can you send to me the necessary contacts that might be useful for me? For example, the new sergeant, that would be very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Chair. I do have a number of questions. I'm not expecting answers today, but just if we could note them down and get the responses in the same way as David has done before. My first one is about electric scooters, Flaxley Road area. Sometimes two children on, or sometimes on the roadways, sometimes on the path doing excessive speeds. I just would like some clarity on the current legal situation. I keep reading that they're illegal, but no one seems to be doing anything in terms of enforcement. And I accept that we are in this constant thing of, is it county, is it the police? So you seem to be the right place to kind of at least put that. So what's the current legal situation? Are there any proposals to clamp down on these before there really is a serious accident? I've seen some near misses, certainly up on Flaxley Road and on the Doncaster Road. The next one is about deliberate noisy backfiring of cars in town, and down the Doncaster Road, along the bypass, up the 1041. I can stand in my house, in my garden, and I can hear them doing those circuits. And I do live opposite the police station. So it is one of those things that I think somebody should be doing something about. Again, seems to be an unclear legal situation. It used to be, I remember once being given a ticket because I had a hole in my exhaust pipe when I was much poorer and had an old Peugeot, and I had to get that rectified and go along to the police station. I didn't mind about that. But where are we at with that? Because these are the irritating things. It's not just me. These are the things that make our residents very angry. It's sometimes not the big things. It's these things that are happening constantly. And another big issue that we have at the moment is around graffiti. And just some information, and if it could go to the parish and town councils as well, as to where we report that and who can now deal with it. It used to be that the district council had its own machine, and that could be, you could book it, but it seems to have kind of fallen into a bit of a black hole because of the unification really of those. Right, so I've got a lot of yellow notes, Chair, I do apologise. Just a positive note, the stuff that you've put on about youth provision, we've opened a new community hub called Our Space up on the Flaxley Road, just to tell people that they are now running something called Zone. We got funding from the PFCC on a Wednesday for young people to go in, and 58 Flaxley Road. Please tell people about that. It's an attempt. We've only got 6 months funding, but it is something we know is needed in that area. And so we want to at least start to nibble at that problem. Just a bit of information as well on the youth multi-agency, the maps that you've talked about. They meet on a monthly basis. Really finding out if anyone can join those. I'm thinking of our coordinator now at Our Space who's running that and doing that youth work. She might have some direct thing. If we can't, just at least for somebody to let us know as local members the minutes or something. I get frequently very frustrated that all these things are happening out there and I get told about them, but I hear about them at these meetings. I don't know as a member. So that would be another useful one. Next one. Just the thing I think about the CCTV, pulling that together, this strange thing that we have in Selby being separate, some kind of time scale for that, because it is seriously needed. Bob's point about antisocial behaviour in Sherburn, the same as in town. And if we had the CCTV, we could start to at least address that, and the police could do that too. So if we can put some kind of time scale on that, that might be it. That's it on that one, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. There's definitely some crossover points there. Would you like to come back, Laura?
Yeah, if I may, I can answer one of your points quite quickly there, Councillor Davis. So I'm linked in with Alice down at Our Space. Due to the nature of the multi-agency meetings where the young people are discussed, we don't have the information sharing agreements with Alice in place with that. although I am maintaining a dialogue with her. So we have some very generic conversations. We are looking as a community safety hub to introduce what we're going to call community maps, whereby we'd like to replicate a model that's already running quite successfully in Rydale, where people like yourselves can all come to join, and we can have a little bit more of a discussion around issues like a lot of things you've already mentioned, actually, to bring things like that to the fore so that we're able to discuss those and be able to try to start to put some problem solving in place in quite a timely manner. So that is to come. That's work that we're currently in situ with. Will be before Christmas, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're probably going into a period of, you know, summer leave and things like that, but I don't think it'll be much past September, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Laura. Yeah, thank you. If we can share that information with everyone as well, because there's a lot of crossover graffiti and all that kind of thing. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. Just for information, that backfiring is a kit you can get that fits an exhaust system with a spark plug, and the excess fuel gets burnt off. It's just one of those kits that you can get. They're not illegal, unfortunately. My question is I'd like a sort of some fascinating fact in here that they've managed to gather 4 times as many knives, etc., in Tadcaster as they have in Selby. Yeah. Any significance in that, considering that Selby is slightly bigger than Tadcaster?
I think with what we've seen with the knife project in particular is the fact that it's had some good promotion, and when you actually look at the contents, a lot of the knives that are being deposited are often people's knives from the kitchens, which is actually still really positive because you often don't know where to put them. I think some of the promotion has meant the positive numbers going in there, and I don't see the volume being a negative thing. I actually see it's a really positive thing because the communities are engaging and they see it as a good thing. So let's hope we can keep the numbers coming up.
If members will allow me, I can vouch for that. It was a real positive impact in the town. Councillor Warnecan.
Thank you, Chairman. Please don't take this as a criticism, but you have written a short report, not mentioned Sherburn and Elmet, but in the report, the only reference to the Ainsty is when it's put in together with Harrogate, etc. And I'm conscious that we need to not forget the Ainsty. If you look at another report later on, the Ainsty isn't mentioned either. We are part of this area committee. And, Councillor Paraskos and myself really struggle to go back and report to our people we represent what has been discussed about the Ainsty in this committee. So can we make sure that when officers are asked to give a report, they're reminded that that black hole up there in northern part of this actually has people in it, and people and councillors that care about it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warnecan. That's noted. Councillor Shaw, right?
Yeah, it's a couple of points. First one, it's nice to see Julia back again. We had some fantastic community safety when she was based in, then she buggered off to Harrogate. Well, you can't blame her for that now. But I think on the knife boxes, the probably location in Selby of Back Micklegate car park isn't the best location to put it. And supporting what Melanie says about the scooters, that if someone were to call in at the local army cadet force when they meet, you might find 3 of them because they zoom up and down Armory Road on a regular basis to and from there. And there's also 2 who go to Selby High School on them. And they are a problem. I've had residents complain that I'll not use their language, they go quite fast on the pavement or quite fast down the middle of the road. And it is a danger. So other than that, I think it's a really good report. And I can see Arnold's point about the Ainsty not being included, but there are reports in the rest of our agenda that include stuff that's got absolutely nothing to do with Selby or Ainsty at all. I think the reports need to be far more specialised towards Selby and Ainsty. But overall, I think community safety in the hands of Julia is good. There you go.
Thank you,
Councillor. In your diary, I don't say good things.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. I've got 2 more comments. Councillor Grogan and then Councillor Paraskos. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm broadly supportive of this report. Thank you, Julia. But I also consider what Councillor Packham said. it was broadly aimed at Tadcaster and Selby, and I actually put a report in about this saying, get a knife bin in Sherburn because that's where most of the knives will be. And I think there was consideration for that. But my also other point is, I've got an area called Byram. Now, I don't want you to share the maps because if you did share it, it'd be too upsetting for us councillors, even though I've got a 30-year police career behind me. But all I hope is that you update me what's happening in Byram and also update me with in terms of the lead officer, who's a lead inspector now for this area. We had a conversation, both Steve Shaw Wright on the police panel with the Chief Constable, Tim Forber, who told us about some wonderful work that's been taking place with North Yorkshire Police in terms of neighbourhood policing. And he said there was a new inspector now in Selby, and that person will be introducing themselves to us. And she's obviously not in place, or he's not in place yet. As and when that happens, I'd like to know who that person is. But thank you very much for listening. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura.
I think you know Rob Campbell, so it's Rob that's coming back in as the inspector for Selby District, and he starts on the 7th of July. But yeah, absolutely, I'll update you separately around some of the work that we've done. I've worked alongside PCSO Wood and PC Cobbold quite significantly for Byram and also the housing providers. So we are doing some really solid work over there.
That's excellent. If you forgive me, Chair, also road racing between Fairburn and the old A1, it's a massive antisocial problem. If you can update me on that, that'd be great. Thanks very much, Laura.
Thank you, Councillor Paraskos.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's probably an irrelevant question, but I cover 11. Yeah, I'll ask it anyway. Thanks, Tim. I cover 11 parishes, and the police liaison officer, they used to love him coming round, but Pierre seems to be very busy. Is there any chance of replacing him or getting him some help? No.
We can ask that. We can take that question back. Clearly, we can't answer a police question, but yeah, we can ask that question. But yeah, totally.
Thank you, members, and thank you, officers. And there's really positive, productive work going on, and I've had some really positive meetings and feedback with the team. So thank you. Any other comments? No, I think we're all good. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 10, quite timely as Steve Brown's just arrived. So we're on to parking enforcement, a verbal update. Steve, if you'd like to come forward. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Steve Brown. I'm the head of parking services. I've just driven down from Harrogate. Probably best that I open up with a briefing from almost from start to finish, really. It's important for everybody to have an understanding of where parking journey started as far as LGR is concerned, if I may. So think back to a couple of years ago nearly, and we were a big county where our off-street parking places were controlled by the then district councils. So 156 or so car parks divided between 7 district councils. Equally, the county council, who's the highway authority, controlled all the on-street parking that happens. And of course, by doing so in the whole county, has provided at least some continuity in that regard. So that's what we came to. The mission on day one was to deliver parking in a safe and legal condition, which we duly did. Very successfully, I think. Well, I would, wouldn't I? With now some time to sit back and look at parking as a whole and what do we want to achieve. The transformation agenda was created, and of course, we looked at parking and decided a number of projects were required in order to in order to bring parking up to the modern day, as it were. We've got 430 pay and display machines, for example, spread over those parking areas that I mentioned to you earlier. They range in age between 5 and 15 years old. I think everybody, members particularly, get bitten in their inboxes are full of people. I can't get on that machine and it wouldn't take my coins and it did this and it didn't do that. And I know you can all see that and understand that. So the council's made a significant investment and we're replacing all 430 machines. It's been approved. The project is in place and is quite advanced now. We're just about to go to procurement and hopefully you'll see the differences they will all make by the end of March 26. And it will make a difference for the customer journey particularly, and also some savings for the council at the same time. So it's an all-round win, to be quite frank. Along with that, part of a £2.5 million investment programme, we're going to replace any lights in the council car parks that don't meet up the modern standards. Where there's sodium lighting, we'll replace it with LED. Ultimately, it saves money, less spillage of light, better for the safety of the car parks, better for the customer journey again, particularly in the winter, to be fair. So that all started way back in that dizzy past, and we've got to the point where we are now about to deliver all of that. In the interim, parking service is restructured. And again, there was probably a thinking or an understanding that a county-wide operation would save money, which is true. But that was considering that, of course, the districts had it right in the first place, which to a varying degree, they did or didn't. You have to acknowledge that. Against the backdrop of finance and savings and the principles of civil parking enforcement, we set about to do our restructure. That's been done for a while now. We went then and undertook a recruiting campaign because we've identified that we were short of enforcement staff, not overindulged with them. So we took on a recruiting campaign and have pretty much now come to the end of that. We'll always be recruiting. People come and go. Some areas are more difficult than others. Can't recruit for toffee in Harrogate, but we can in other areas. So we've undertook that. For your interest particularly, we've increased the numbers in Selby by about 300%. Now, you may argue that was from a low base. It was. We inherited one. And you've now got three. To be fair, the feedback I'm getting, the three staff that we have here are actually very good. We appointed a new supervisor. I know he's been working with local members and communities as well, and I'm getting some very good feedback. Sean Bolton is his name. He's a great guy and known locally too, which is helpful. We've another couple of enforcement officers. The new one that we have, the other guy's quite old. He's been here a while. The new guy we got is from Doncaster. He was already trained. He's got a young family, moved in the area, and he's getting on really well. Some statistics for you. In the last 12 months, we've issued 908 PCNs off street and 1,835 PCNs on street. So just shy of 2,000 PCNs in Selby in the last 12 months. That proof is demonstrable because we've got it in our system. I hope it pleases you, but it isn't a finished article. It's not all about PCNs, but it is a barometer nonetheless, isn't it? We've concentrated our efforts in areas where members had concerns. Now, I understand from this briefing, when we get to the question and answer bit, I've no doubt there'll be areas where you still have concern, and I'm here to listen. And on the backdrop of the enforcement side of it, 'cause it's not always all about enforcement, CPE provides uniformed patrolling officers. They speak to the public. They move people on. We've done a fair bit of work in Selby with resurfacing work. You may argue it was from funds that you'd already secured as Selby Council. I get that, but we pushed it on and we got it done. And I think they did a really good job, and you've seen the rewards of that resurfacing work. But again, more to do. We understand this. On a strategy perspective, which I think is important now to blend in with that enforcement side of it, there's a lot of work going on throughout the whole county. You'll be, town improvement plans, local transport plans that are being written and haven't been finished yet. And Parking Services has produced a parking principles document.
It's in draft form. I presented it to the overview and scrutiny mid-cycle briefing only this week. My assistant director, Barry Mason, is taking it to overview and scrutiny panel on the 11th of July. And I see the leaders here, and it's going before the executive in August. This is quite a high level document nonetheless. And the aim of it is to create a framework document with 20 parking principles balanced against the council plan. The idea being it's a framework, as I said, and we will then after that create daughter documents to it, which will be your policy and local action plans. So to give you a flavour of how that might look, because it hasn't been adopted yet, the intent is that after adoption, we will do local area action planning. Now, North Yorkshire is a big county. Stevie Boy here can't really cover it all at once, as I'm sure you could all take and, consider. But nonetheless, we'll do our best to get groups put together regionally around the county. The point being that we're coming to each area to speak to you directly, to formulate those local area action plans in conjunction with you, not in spite of you. And I think it's really important that you understand that. So you can look forward to that, and you will have your say in how those plans are formed. But it will be after the adoption of the principles. I think that's probably all I have, really. I know that I'd mentioned I produced a written statement to you before, so I'd be really happy to take questions.
Thank you, Steve. If members will just allow me, I just wanted to thank Steve and the team, because we have noticed a difference in my ward in terms of working with Sean and actually other agencies. One of the things I wasn't fully aware of was if the lines and signs aren't very clear, then there's no enforcement. So we'd worked very closely with Highways and Sean and the team. So thank you for that. I've got Councillor Grogan, then Councillor Shaw, right, then Councillor Prescott.
Good afternoon, Stephen.
Hello.
Parking enforcement's been a big bugbear for this area, this council. And I'm going to call you Stevie Boy because that's how you refer to yourself. I've been impressed with what you've told us today. The fact there's 3 officers here and that you're looking at what's happening. You've told us about the PNCs. I'm an enforcement man. That's my background. And I'd like a regular, when we have regular meetings, as to what the PNCs you've been issuing out in this area, because I'm sure the people certainly in Selby will tell you that the parking's quite appalling. And you're addressing that, but don't just look at Selby. There's also Tadcaster, Sherburn and Elmwick and other outlying villages where there are issues. I'm pretty sure you'll get a grip of that. But I've got to say this, I'm impressed with your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. In answer to that, what I'd like to say is that, of course, the local area action plan that we're going to undertake as a result of adopting the principles document, if that's the case, will be the point to raise those areas like Tadcaster, like Sherburn, because I know they need covering. Some of the more rural areas are now going to be the missing bit of the jigsaw, aren't they? To some, it's only 100 metres of yellow line. To the people that live there and are blighted by it, it's absolutely everything. I understand that. We don't have enough officers to do every square foot, as I know you all know, but we'll do our best, and that's the place we'll bring that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Right.
When do you envisage introducing parking charges in Tadcaster, because the council's losing $250,000 a year by providing free parking for the brewery workers?
Well, it's a very good question, of course, and one that we're looking at. And again, it will be, I cite the local area action planning. The council financial position is an interesting one when related to parking. I would put it to you that actually we try to plan our parking enforcement and our parking planning around a strategy and a policy rather than financial gain. But that is a consequence of it, and we'll look at that in the local area action plans.
So if we don't introduce parking charges in Tadcaster, can we remove them in Selby then? In the interests of fairness and, because it is wrong that people in Selby are charged through the nose and people in Tadcaster don't pay a penny.
It's a fair point that you make.
On Sherburn, I mean, you're losing £250,000. We heard earlier that the council's strapped for cash, yet you're letting people park for no.
Yeah, we've only just got our feet under the table, to be fair, and we'll bring that forward in that plan that I just mentioned. I guess that's been an issue for a while longer than we've been a council. Yeah. The brewery is an obstacle as well to a degree. So so if that's not music to your ears, I don't suppose it will be. But we'll work through it. It's not only there, Morton as well is another one where there's a big estate that encompasses the town, and it's very difficult to put our policies and strategies in place on that backdrop, but we'll work towards it.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It was something that I brought up with the previous executive member for the highways. So harmonisation of all services and charges. I hear what you're saying, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Parascos.
Thank you. You say you're replacing all the ticket machines.
Yes.
Are these going to be using QR codes? And if
No.
they are, oh, that's all right then. Because I'm just wondering, with all the scams on QR codes,
we won't be using QR codes in parking for any sort of payment related thing. No.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you.
Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that report, Steve. It was really interesting. And thanks, whenever I've come to you with an issue in Sherburn, which is my division, I've always had a really prompt response and action has been taken. So thanks for that. This local area action plan idea, I love the sound of that. And can I put Sherburn close to the top of the list, please?
Thank you, Councillor. And after those comments, absolutely. No, but seriously, it's going to be a regional thing, isn't it? So Selby, this area that you all cover, will be part of a group, if that makes sense, rather than Shelburne in isolation. It won't be. It will be part of the Selby and this area's this group's area. In fact, we may even do it in terms of the area office boundaries, of which there are 7. We haven't decided that yet, and I need some guidance from Carl and Barry.
Oh, Councillor Warnock and then Councillor Davis.
Hello, Steve. Thank you for your report. Really good.
Oh, we meet at last.
I think I might have imagined something in the previous meeting, so forgive me if I've imagined it, but did we have a discussion about other members of the North Yorkshire Council workforce getting enforcement rights, so that, you know, when they're going in empty dustbins and there's a car parked badly, they can put a ticket on it or whatever? Did I imagine that? Thank you.
Might have been a fever dream there, I think.
Was it something? No, it's a serious question. You know, did we have a discussion about giving powers to other people? You know,
Environmental enforcement, I'm told, Councillor Warnock, and so.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't imagine it completely then.
Warnock, the waste team also issue a ticket that looks like a parking fine, asking people not to park. So that in the Harrogate district, I don't know if they do it elsewhere.
Thanks.
Maybe I'll help here, Chair. There is a conversation being had at the moment between myself and regulatory services with regard to using civil enforcement officers for some, you may call it antisocial behaviour offences such as littering, dog fouling, but it's only at the conversational stage at the minute. The ADs are looking at it. Callum, McKeon and Barry have been talking about it. We're putting some training in place to get them qualified, but I guess we need to wait for that report to go through before I could really say any more.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Then quickly, Councillor Grogan. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Just really to echo what you said, Kirsty. I think it's Steve, you came fairly quickly to Selby and walked around, and for me the eye opener was that the signage wasn't right, the lines weren't right, this wasn't right, that wasn't right. Now I think we did identify a lot of those, but then you obviously got sucked into this huge day job that you have. So it would just be good to know who to contact to try and get some of those things in place again, because traffic in Selby, particularly in the town, is a nightmare. It just is. The town is gridlocked frequently. I mean, not helped by problems with the traffic lights and things, but just, you know, enforcement around the schools and things. So as that I think it has much improved, and thank you. You're getting a lot of praise. This doesn't happen often, you know. But that thing about signage and if you like the backroom stuff where the bylaws aren't right and this isn't right, that can take months to go through. The sooner we can start to influence that, then the better. So some, you know, not now, I don't expect an answer, but just some information about how we can move some of that along and do another walk round would be great.
Well, thank you. We have a plan. I'm pleased to tell you. So there's a couple of things in there really. The aims of civil parking enforcement I mentioned to you earlier. One of the principal aims is to gain compliance. The number of penalty charges that we've issued, I hope, is refreshing to a degree. That's part of the strategy. So if you park in Selby illegally, the aim that we're trying to, the theme we're trying to create is that you're taking a gamble. You'll see that increase in the PCNs has helped. It probably isn't gained compliance yet, but it will as we improve. We also have another packet of measures coming in. So we're digitising the traffic regulation orders, in part because North Yorkshire wants to, and in part because the DFT have said we have to. Now you can put that around whichever way you like. We have paper-based traffic orders currently that we've all inherited. That is difficult to work with in this modern era, to be fair. When this county decriminalised, I want to say it was somewhere around about 2002, so some 23 years ago. And a lot of these traffic orders haven't been reviewed for some time during that process. And of course, the road's been dug up, signs have been moved and then put back in a different place. All these little nuances that happen. That's some of the issues that we've been caused when we did our walk round that time ago. So we're going to digitise the TROs. What does that mean? We're going to buy a digital service provision from a company, so that basically puts it online. That will trigger then a survey. We've got about 8,500 kilometres in North Yorkshire. You know, there's 400 in Reading. And so that's quite a mission, isn't it? But the end result is that survey is done with a LiDAR. You see, it's like Star Wars van going down the road. 4 or 5 of them running around our roads, picturing everything through it's called a LiDAR survey. They're then going to put that into a consolidation of our traffic orders, moving traffic, so speed limits, bridge weights, you name it, the whole lot. And the new order will be written against what's actually on the ground. The good thing about that is it will open up my enforcement because it will put things right that are wrong. We lost an adjudication the other day because the traffic order was wrong. Now that sounds like I'm being a little disingenuous to highways. The Harrogate on-street order is 640 pages. Just to give you a, economy of scale, most of that is right. So we only focus on those little bits, don't we, that are wrong, and they cause us the aggro, because it's always that junction that you want to resolve. And it isn't good enough me replying to you on the email saying, well, the TRO's not right. We'll fix it then. So the digital TROs will speed everything up. It's easier. You can see it online. You can click on a street and there it show you all the restrictions. It helps you put together consultation documents, and that's coming online probably by January. That will help us. It will speed up the traffic order process. We lodge them with traffic enforcement courts at Northampton, and it will give you something to relate to. I can get them changed quickly and highways can react faster.
Thank you. Can I just clarify, Steve? Is Sean Bolton still the person that members would go to do a walk around and check lines and all that kind of thing? Would he cover all of the areas 7 basically?
Yes. Yeah. And of course, sorry, the next scale in that line would be Charlotte, the operations, and every one of you's got a direct line to me.
Thank you. Councillor Grogan.
Yeah, just to say, when you talk about the antisocial behaviour, will you bolt on fly tip into that? I think you'll be thinking of doing that, won't you? Well, the same thing, although we've never met, I've spoken to you on the phone. I turned for a licensing meeting with my panel members at Richmond, and we were locked out of the car park for the council. And I rang you, and you got it unlocked, and you got us in. So thank you.
People are going to think I've paid you.
Yes. This is a very lovely complimentary discussion. I would leave now, Steve, if I were you. No, thank you very much. That was really helpful for members. So thank you.
You're welcome.
We move to item 11, which is our localities annual update. Tom, thank you for so patiently waiting there. If you want to come forward. Sorry, and Connor as well. I apologise. Welcome.
Not too many lights. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members will obviously have the opportunity to look at the report on localities progress after the last year. And I'll start off by apologising to both councillors Warnock and Paraskos, because I'm conscious, looking at the report, which is at quite a high level, that when it gets into the detail, there is much more around Selby in that localities patch. So I apologise for that. I can't fix it this time, but I'll try and do better next time. My colleague Connor has come along because there is reference in the plan to in the report to the town investment plans, and it's just if there's any questions around that, Connor will be probably better placed to pick those up than I am. Essentially, the report runs through the work over the last year of the 3 branches of the localities team, so communities about which I can possibly field some questions, and then the parish liaison and double devolution, on which I will take questions away, and likewise the migrant support team, about which I'll be taking questions away, should there be some. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got quite a few, Tom. I'll just run through them. I'm not expecting an answer today, but they're just things that came up when I was looking at it. If I can, having lost my page, hold on.
You got your pen ready, Tom?
I updated this, had a paper copy, but I updated this one. The first one was, 2.2, obviously details the different teams that there are. Again, and I do keep asking this, just really some information or an email to members to say how we access those teams. I know I can spend half an hour trying to find my way through the website, but it just seems to me that, that's much easier for them to do to the relevant people, because there may be real opportunities there for joint work. We have as a regular item on the town council agenda, just how we can support refugees and asylum seekers in the town and try and develop that. And I'm aware that's part of that remit. So it would just be really useful that, we've got, that was an insistence of all the councillors. We wanted to be able to do that when we were having difficulty. So that could set something sort of useful in motion if you could. And 2.3 says there are a number of programmes and projects as early priorities. Again, be really nice to know where we can find those details. Then we might find places we could help and participate in those. So just the general comments are good, but just a little table underneath of what there is would be great. And I think that's probably going to come up again. Same's true around the financial inclusion. Continue to lead and coordinate several work areas related to financial inclusion. Well, that's something I'm really interested in. So just details of those may not be right for every councillor, but if you put them in, then at least we can make that choice. Community anchor organisations, the progression of organisation development action plans. There's a lot of jargon in here, some of which I'm used to, but it doesn't actually tell me that much. So again, just what is the timetable for this, for its completion, or is it an ongoing thing? What are the targets? And again, where can we as councillors find details of what's happening locally around those? They may already be available, and I apologise if they are, but just this is an ideal opportunity to kind of flag them up or flag up where we could find them would be great. The 5.2 integrated community support talks about, is there a partnership in Selby for this? If not, that might be something that we would like to talk about in those of us who represent Selby, the town. And, what are its plans and projects? And again, just contact details. And I think the same's true. I found out recently about the SWIFT project because we had with an asylum seeker working in our new drop-in, and he's got lots of questions. So I've accessed it to help him. But again, I think sometimes we get killed with information that we don't, we don't notice it the first time. So, and your report seems like an absolutely brilliant time to kind of give us that information. I'm sure you knew we would ask this. 6.2, the Bringing Brazil to Selby project. Health, and I'm assuming this is sort of a moving forward on the social prescribing type thing. But again, can we ask again, local members are kept aware of these projects and initiatives and at least given details of how to access, who is eligible, because, people like Ali, who's working for us, it would be good for him, and there will be others. That's the whole point of that drop-in, that it is a place where the refugees and the asylum seekers can come to. So that's kind of another one. What's that one? 6.4, community partnership operating in Sherburn, and looking at Tadcaster community partnership there. I think elected members for Selby would like to have a conversation with somebody at some time about that. With the biggest centre of population, that feels important that we're kind of involved in that. I mean, it might be a different structure, but that would at least be a start for us. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Do you want to come back on those now, Tom?
Very briefly, just on one or two, because some of them are outside my area of limited expertise. In terms of the community anchors and progress on those generally, for the more established ones, so Sherburn for us, Selby, Tadcaster, we're kind of coming into year 3 of what was an initial 3-year investment programme around their development. So there is work going on about how do we look at continuing to work with those anchors to help them continue to deliver for us as that initial funding kind of moves towards the end of the initial investment programme. So there is consideration given as to how that's gone so far. I know in the past members have asked about the southern areas and some of the more rural villages that they've felt have not been well represented. So we are planning to get in touch with some of the parish councils in particular around those more rural villages and try and have a conversation about what might work better there. So that's a bit work in progress, but those are just a couple of points that I can say things about. Other than that, yes, absolutely. It's probably my fault, some of it, for just not having enough conversations with you. Shout at me, and always happy to try and have a chat, because it's obviously a bit limited in the context of the report. Definitely picking up on the point about the community partnerships, and if so, we as a members are interested, I'll flag that up with Liz, my manager, and Marianne, and we can start those conversations about getting a partnership going, with the slight caveat that they might not all work at the same pace because, capacity, but certainly the conversation can be started.
Sorry, Chair, could I just come back just in terms of the community anchor associations? And I know that we've said this to you many times. It's not just the south of the area. I think those of us who are in the town who do not feel that well served, and that we get the information. So if it could include, if you're coming to the end of 3 years, an evaluation by members, that would be useful, because it isn't, we're sometimes a few hundred yards from where the information is, but it isn't disseminated well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warnecan.
Thank you, Chair. Just so you know that I'm not obsessed with the Ainsty. Last Saturday, I organised and ran an event called More in Common in Harrogate. And I just want to congratulate the authority for allowing Poppy Charters to come to that event and make representation and talk to people. It was an amazing event, people from all walks of life, cultures and backgrounds. I need some clarification, though, on the community anchor organisations. It was 3.11 in the report. I get, like Councillor Davis, the jargon is a little bit, loses me a bit. So for clarification, there's Boroughbridge Community Charity, is that a community anchor association?
Yes.
Is Tadcaster Barn a community anchor association?
It's technically Tadcaster Rural Community Interest Company, but effectively they are the barn, sort of, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. So it comes back to the concept of dark holes, because I think Liz knows that I know that, for example, Tockwith is not represented in all of this. So we've got to find ways of the parts of the Ainsty becoming part of the association or organisation, not association. And so anything I can do, and I'm sure Councillor Paraskos would be the same, but he's living in that dark hole as well, is that anything we can do to facilitate this, we will do. And forgive me if I'm speaking for you, but I know you well enough. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that probably reflects the issues that have been raised about it's the rural bits that maybe we don't reach as well as we should. We definitely don't reach as well as we should, if I'm allowed to say that. I've said it.
Noted. Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. I don't want to shoot the messenger here, Tom. I think this report to me reads like it's a non-specific report that's been written that can be circulated to any area committee. And there's a little bit at the end about what happens in Selby and Ainsty. And I would have much preferred to have seen a report which dealt with those issues, but that explained them in the context of what's happening in Selby and Ainsty, because this is an area committee meeting. And I'm looking particularly at community anchor organisations where we could have had a better explanation and detail of what our community anchors are doing. And it runs through the whole report for me. So I just wonder, I haven't got any other questions on it, but I just wonder if I could suggest that in future, this committee report, when it comes to us, concentrates quite a lot on what's happening in our area, because that's what's important to this committee. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely feed that back. It may be because it was the end of year one, there was a sense of trying to give a kind of coherent picture across the piece to everyone, but I'll feed those comments back.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's definitely some items there that we could maybe come back to that would be more our district specific, the anchors and partnerships things being one. Any other comments from anyone? Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Item 12, climate change projects funding briefing note. This is for Joss, who is online.
Hello.
Thank you, Joss.
So, hello everybody, and thank you for inviting me back to join you. So, you might remember I attended the last area committee on the 20 in April and presented a report on climate change update for the Selby and Ainsty area. And a question was raised at that meeting following a short discussion about a previous programme of projects that had been put together following the Climate Change Action Plan from the former Selby District Council and some legacy funding that we were utilising to implement that series of projects. So the question was, could we have some more information on what's happened to that funding? Because I wasn't clear at the meeting whether it was still available or not. So I believe a response has been circulated, but I'll just read out the salient points, which is that the original programme of decarbonisation projects, which was approved by the Director of Environment back in February 2024, following consultation with the Area Committee, and I hope members will recall that, used a capital budget that was previously approved and set aside by Selby District Council. Following local government reorganisation, funding has been consolidated into council reserves, and in line with the council's financial governance process, the projects would need to bring forward a business case for approval to proceed and agree the allocation or reallocation of that funding. And the sense that I get is that that would be obviously in competition at the same level as all the other council priorities.
Thank you, Joss. Members' questions, Councillor Warnecan.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Joss. I was the person that asked this question at the last meeting, and in a sense, I suppose I could have written this answer as well. I have to say I understand the answer, but I have to also say how disappointed I am because whilst I wasn't part of the process, I'm absolutely sure that Selby District Council put together business models in the first place to get this money in the first instance. So why we are now being told as an area committee that we've got to put another business model together is I don't understand. So just want to register that I'm disappointed this money has been lost this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warnecan. Do you want to come back at all, Joss? Or
No, I don't have a response to that. Thank you.
thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Davis?
Yeah, I mean, amen to that. Specifically, I would like to ask the details of what was set aside. I wasn't on the district at that point, but I think it was about £2 million. How much was actually spent and on what? And how much went back into balances? I think that's what we were looking for when we asked for this report. This is, just a general communication. This is another disappointment, I think, for Selby. There was a real opportunity here, and the district council did, on that occasion, look forward and put aside money for environmental projects, which we don't usually aren't that well served for. So if we could have that, what was set aside, how much was spent on what, and how much went back into balances. Thank you.
Thank you,
With
Councillor
Chair's
Davis.
permission, I can give you that answer right now.
Yep, please
Yeah.
do, Joss.
So it was slightly less than just mentioned there. The amount we were working to was a sum of around 250,000, and around 50,000 of that has been allocated and spent on tree planting in the former Selby area. Some of it's gone on the sort of the capital required for that tree planting, and the other part of the 50,000 has been allocated for a 3-year maintenance programme, which I hope you'll agree is really important for newly planted trees. And then the remaining balance was the rest of the programme, which members will already be aware of, was around Selby Library, decarbonisation, implementation. It was around the electric vehicle charging point at Selby Civic Centre, and then any remaining funding was going to be allocated to looking at Sherburn in Elmet Industrial Estate, particularly related to the public transport access. So 50,000 has been spent and allocated from that fund, and the remaining is the amount that's gone into reserves that I mentioned earlier.
So 200,000 has gone into reserves.
Yes. I'm going to just double check that, but yes.
Thank you. Any further comments on this from members? Councillor Warnecan.
Yeah, I just want to say that we are, I think, being short-sighted. All these investments or all this spending that was climate related is going into reserves to deal with an existing financial problem. And I think the short-sightedness is, and if you listen to what the mayor said, when it comes to every pound spent on investment to prevent flooding saves £8 worth of repairs and damages. Anything we can do to improve the climate situation is going to create a bonus to us financially and environmentally. So I think we are being short-sighted.
Thank you, Councillor Warnecan, and thank you, Joss.
Thank you.
Item 13 is the Area Committee Annual Report, which all members will have seen as it was circulated. Councillor Davis, do you want to come in on anything at all? Or? want to bob your mic on?
Sorry, Chair. That the December note says that an update on the condition of housing stock, and we ask that regular updates be provided. I'm not sure that we've seen that many of those, and it is something, I mean, Councillor McCartney raised it earlier, it is something we all know that there are empty houses in our area. The state of the housing stock of Selby, council housing stock was poor. The housing revenue account had run out of money, so everything was just on hold. I do know that North Yorkshire have picked up on this and are doing a considerable amount of work on this. But I think we do need that regular update on the housing stock. It didn't just be a written one, but just voids, number of repairs, number of retrofits, all that kind of thing. I just think at every meeting it would be really useful to have that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Are there any other comments on the annual report? Councillor Packham?
Just a small one. As a planner and geographer on the map, can we do something to make sure that the Tadcaster Library isn't obliterated by the extra care location?
Thank you for noticing that. Thank you. Any other comments? No. Item 14, we come to the work programme. I've scribbled a few notes down of what's coming up, and two of the points that I'd noted were a report to come back from the Mayor on empty houses and the push for landlords to act. So that would be a future potential discussion. And then also further information about the anchors and the partnerships that relate to our localities, including our friends in the Ainsty. Any members got any comments on the work programme? Councillor Jordan?
Thanks. I'd like to talk about this, the housing. I think that needs to be in there in terms of the housing revenue account and what happens with council houses, because John and I have had a number of conversations about how many houses. He thought 2 years was probably bad enough for a house being empty, but I had one in my ward that's only just reopened that was been offline for 5 years. As well as one that's been offline for 2 years in my division, because I've spoken to officers recently, and as you can imagine, and one of the things that I learned was that they've gone back from they went over from paid staff to contractors to do all housing repairs, and that has not worked. It costs far too much. So they actually have now gone back to having paid staff using our vehicles. I noticed they're still running around with Selby District on, but there you go. But they are in-house staff and they're actually paying them a better wage. So they are trying to now get on top of the situation. But having 138 houses empty is bad, and I would really like us to see an update from officers on how they're progressing these things and getting on top of housing repairs and voids, getting rid of voids. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Warnock.
Thank you. The informal discussion with the Environment Agency, do we have a date? And can I just put a lot of stress how important this is that we inform ourselves and try and do what we can to influence the water companies, because recently there was an amazing event took place in Knaresborough called the Bed Race with 30,000 people visiting Knaresborough and all these athletes crossing the river, not knowing that the river was 5 times the accepted level in E. coli when they did it. And I think we need to make sure that we can put pressure on the water authorities, and by being informed, it'll be something that we can do more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warnock. Sorry, I misheard the first part of what you said there. What?
Have we got a date for the team session that we've planned?
We haven't got a finalised date, but I'm looking at week commencing 28th of July at some point during that. I'll send details around once it's finalised.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, then Councillor Shawright.
Thanks, Chair. It was really just to say that there was always a lot on the work programme. I just think it might be useful to schedule in a couple more online dates and then work out what we do with them, as we move forward. And all of our difficulties is, I'm sure including yours, David, is actually getting the dates in the diary. But it is useful, and we can separate out then those items which are really about information rather than discussion, and that's the best way to do that. I mean, people can then decide not to, but if you've got the date in the diary, we can always remove it. That would be useful.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Shawright.
It's back on the housing numbers, Chair. I think what we need to recognise that it's not always the same 138 houses week after week after week, and there's voids come and voids go. We have had reports to the district in the past of the number of voids taking whatever number of weeks, and it does show that the council is turning them over really quickly. But we do have an awful lot of people who leave the properties, some in a box, some voluntarily, and work has to be done. So it's how the turnover of those 138 is. And there are some of them, and I have seen some of them, when people have left, they do take months of work to actually get them back to a lettable standard. At the housing scrutiny last week, I think Bob had chaired a scrutiny group about lettable standards, and that report is really good. And I think everybody should have a look at that. But if we got regular updates of the churn that we had, it wouldn't look as bad as it does.
Thank you, Councillor Shawright. So I think members agree that it would be beneficial to have a deeper dive into these numbers and a report come from housing officers. Councillor Packham.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we had the report from the Mayor today, and I wondered if we needed to think about where we got updates from that going forward. I'm particularly interested in, as he gets these funds in, I'd really like to know what benefits they give to Selby and Ainsty. I think that would be a really helpful thing to know. We don't necessarily need to have a long meeting about it, but it would be helpful if he'd update us regularly on what funds he's got and which bits of that are going into Selby and Ainsty and what for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Packham. It was an awful lot of information in that report. So I think when we've all gone through it, I think some areas will become clear, but there are definitely funding streams there that if you know, you know, if you don't know, you're possibly going to miss out on those. So quickly, Councillor Davis, and then we'll...
Sorry, Chair, just quickly on the penultimate page under Culture and Leisure, it says Selby Arts Council. I don't think there is such a thing. I've no idea where it's come from. I would remove it. At least it's one line gone.
You can wish for Selby Arts Council. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Any other comments? Thank you, members. So any other, we'll move on to item 15. Any other items? No other urgent business? So date of next meeting is Thursday the 6th. No, it's not. It's Thursday the 18th of September at 2 p.m. Here. Thank you, members. Thank you for your patience and not being too tough with... We're not being too tough with me. I appreciate it. It's not quite 5 o'clock, so I'll take that as a win.